The white-haired beauty was minding her own business until she heard a familiar voice that made her turn around with its address. "Congratulate me, Ariana." The woman looked happy when she revealed the fact that she was pregnant. She is the main character's half-sister. Concern shone in the girl's golden eyes. She asked what Elena was talking about. The beauty hadn't even gotten married yet and hadn't even found a groom. Ariana starts going over the options of what could have happened. The situation reaches the point of absurdity. Her sister assures her in time that everything happened by mutual consent. She was not abused. A sigh of relief escaped the beauty's chest. But if the maid herself wanted this, then there was no problem. There was no point in worrying anymore. The hands gently fell on the girl's palm, stroking her to calm her down. Before she got a belly, she should definitely get married so that no one would know. The woman shows her concern, realizing that if anything happens, rumors may start. She says that in general, everything will be fine. Elena stated that she is not particularly worried. It's time to ask the most important question. Ariana wanted to know who the father really is. She asks, "Do I know him or not?" It turned out that the man who impregnated Elena was the Count. The blonde's face lights up with horror, because she, Astaroth, is the only daughter of the late Count. The half-sister smiles, revealing everything she had previously hidden. Lowen, Ariana's husband, is the father of the child inside the mother's belly. The beauty's eyes froze. Her pupils shrank. She tried to digest all the information. Her beloved husband cheated on her with someone who was a close person to Ariana. The fist clenches on its own. Emotions flow over the edge. The lady almost couldn't squeeze anything out of herself. "Do you even understand what you're saying now?" Elena seems to be mocking, since she seriously wanted to be congratulated on the fact that she became pregnant from another man. This fact did not bother her at all from the very beginning. The beauty feigns surprise. They always shared everything they had. Which means Ariana shouldn't have behaved like that. She crossed the line when she got angry. The brunette seemed to have gone crazy. She reminded her sister that they shared their mother. Her husband is almost the same thing, because he is exactly the same close person. The woman opens her mouth to remind everyone of the fact that this behavior is not normal. Then the door opens, and the Count's voice is heard. Of course, the young man thinks that there is nothing wrong with what Elena said, and everything is exactly as it should be. He takes the brunette by the hand and turns to his wife. "You didn't have children." The maid, smiling, looks at the love of her life. This moment makes the Countess feel even more angry. It is difficult to find words. Lowen is carefree. He has always been like that. But up until this moment, Ariana could still come to terms with him. The girl should know what kind of relationship they have. She is offered not to pay attention to what is happening. The doves coo right in front of Astaroth, believing that she will not allow herself to cross another line. Her voice dropped sharply. "What is going on here?" The Count is the first to speak up. A strange atmosphere reigns in the room as he delivers another verbal blow. The man found another way, since his wife could not have a child. Pointing his finger at the blonde, the young man literally accuses her. They have been married for about 5 years, but they still have not managed to get pregnant, which is considered absurd. The woman lowered her eyebrows angrily. The more the young man spoke, the more he irritated her. She felt as if she was about to explode, because she was called barren. The blonde noticed that the words sounded like nonsense. If the doctor knew about the problem, the doctor would have already reported everything. Lowen asked if this was the doctor who had served the family for a long time. The green-eyed one finds new ways to ruin everything. In any case, when the child is born, he will become part of the Astaroth family. Once a contract was created, according to which all the man's children would inherit the title of Count, the blonde recoiled. The husband was clearly out of his mind. Raising her voice, the Countess reminded that according to the contract, the child inherits everything only if Ariana gives birth to him. Someone else's baby cannot become an heir. Such tricks won't work when there's a legitimate countess nearby, but it seems the blonde isn't bothered by anything either. He bares his teeth in a nasty smile. Leaning closer, Lowen reminds him that he doesn't really need anyone's permission. "Do you think you're still the boss in this house?" If it weren't for the money of the family to which the young man belonged, the woman would have been lying somewhere in a gateway long ago. She has no need to pretend to be someone. This is too much. There was silence in the room, and the realization came that there was some truth in the hero's words, and that there was a dark side to the story. Lohengrin was a wealthy man of common stock, having inherited his wealth from his father, who was a moneylender. From the very beginning, the marriage was not concluded just like that. This marriage was concluded by agreement, because in the end, the lady had no other choice. The Lohens paid off the Astaroth family's debt. They were not embarrassed by the size, which exceeded billions. It was considered that this was not a large amount. Of course, everything was not so simple. Certain conditions were set. In exchange for this, the Countess's family accepted the guy into their family. The laws in the empire are special. According to the law, a woman cannot inherit the title. When that terrible day came and the lady's father died, the fairy tale ended. Lowen had inherited the earldom because he was the new legal heir, and now he was shouting about it, showing with his whole body that the fact that he had once been an ordinary man was of no importance. Ariana is a wife and belongs to her husband. Such are the conditions. She is obliged to obey in everything that she is told. Thoughts in her head were confused while the heroine tried to find the right words. Until now, no matter how useless the Count was, she fulfilled all her duties. In response, the maiden received a similar attitude. The Countess calmly agreed, and it was this action that almost instantly brought a smile to the guy's face. In his head, he managed to construct the ideal continuation of the conversation. Raising her chin high, the beauty declares that in fact, it would be best for them to get a divorce. She confidently said that she is not going to tolerate such an attitude. The green-eyed man immediately jumped back. Something incomprehensible was happening in his head, because it was already clear that if there was a divorce, the young man would lose his title. Not wanting to deviate too much from his plan, the hero shouts that the Countess will not be able to divorce him. In any case, they are bound by an agreement. The woman is definitely not able to return all the money that was lent to her, given the fact that in the event of a divorce, she will have to return it fivefold. Until now, the Count was sure that the beauty did not have that kind of money, and that she would give in any case. The blonde didn't even want to continue the meaningless conversation. She was in no condition to communicate with a man. It is believed that Lowen knows absolutely nothing, so he should not say anything. The young man should be more careful in this situation. Opening the door to leave, the Countess looks with burning eyes straight at her husband. Even in the worst possible situation, he would never dream of what awaits him. The young man looked worried, but his stepsister showed no signs of worry. Times were changing rapidly in the city. Factories were being built everywhere, and entrepreneurs were gaining more and more influence. Unfortunately, because everything was changing so rapidly, villagers also left their fields and moved to the city. Many aristocrats traditionally simply existed by owning land. They went bankrupt, and that was the end of their story. The Astaroth family was not on the destruction list, but they suffered a slightly different misfortune, and it was no less. The blonde stood as usual, looking at the portrait of her father, located in the main hall on the stairs. If he only cared about the future of their family, none of this would have happened. Families who were in difficult situations decided to sell antiques and relics abroad, and the Count bought these very items, so he got into debt. Astaroth firmly believed that all these relics should be passed on to future generations. He considered this to be one of the most important things. The Countess sadly lowered her eyes, her hand reaching out to the portrait. She does not want to blame her father for what is happening, so she promises herself that she will keep everything she inherited. The beauty had a definite plan, but it could take time. First, she had to deal with the huge amount of money needed for the divorce. The blonde knows that first she will have to put aside money, which she already has on hand. She was going to find a divorce strategy. 5 years ago, there came a time when the lady's father became very ill. He asked for forgiveness for the fact that because of his faith, his daughter had a hard time. When the aristocrats learned that the Count was buying up all the relics, they began to threaten him that they would disappear from abroad and sold them to him at exorbitant prices. After what happened, it was almost impossible to sell the relics for their original price. And even if they sold everything they had, it would not be enough to pay off the 100 billion debt. The father knew that he had done very wrong when he had ruined his family's life. His daughter consoled him. It was okay, there was a solution to this. When the Count was alive, the lady proposed to marry someone in order to get money. But he was against it. He would never have approved of such a marriage. They had time at their disposal, but it seemed that it meant nothing. The girl calmly reminded them of the situation they were in. They didn't even have any land left to sell. The beauty sounded confident. They had to keep at least a part. At least the house that they already had. She didn't want them to be left with nothing. It was time to show her cards. And that's exactly what the lady did. She became engaged to Lowen, and the Earl, dumbfounded, asked again if he was the son of Falvin Green. Nodding, the woman even reminded him of the fact that this man had the largest money-lending enterprise, and his son would inherit absolutely everything. In the end, the woman knew what she was doing. She would marry him, the guy would be accepted into the family, and then he would pay off all the debts, and the relics would be preserved. To help at least with a description, the Countess said that Lowen was handsome and tall. She had not seen him for a long time, but they say that his golden hair even shines. In any case, aristocrats rarely marry for love. Usually everything is calculated. Ois? Aldedad, the old man listened to what his daughter told him. Felvin is an old friend of the man, but it is worth noting that Lowen is not an aristocrat. He is from the common people. These are two different levels of society. Ariana placed her hand on her father's palm, trying to calm him down. The world was changing. They, like everyone else, had to adapt. They had no other choice. The decision had been made long ago. The Countess was going to get married. It was only her choice. She did not want to listen to why it was not a very good idea. When Ariana made that decision 5 years ago, she had no idea that Lowen thought she was a useless and stupid girl. Fortunately, the blonde began to earn money little by little. She worked as an intermediary for aristocratic women whose reputation did not allow them to personally buy goods from a pawnshop or secondhand. The family connections and the knowledge of art received from the Count were very helpful in this matter. The woman did a good job because people continued to want to hire her as an intermediary. Despite all the advantages, the business was not very profitable. Even in her entire life, the beauty would not have been able to save 100 billion. It was unrealistic. The Countess thinks she needs a big business. She also had to find someone to give the title to, because after the divorce, Lowen will no longer be part of the family. More importantly, the girl was not going to pay a penalty for demanding a divorce. She did not want to give the guy a penny. She had to force the young man to demand a divorce. The lady had only one goal. She knew that she had to find out what her husband's weaknesses were and scare him to death. In the end, he would give her a divorce. He would have no choice. The next day came. The Countess went to the address that was given to her earlier. The woman stopped near the house. If the information is reliable, she is there. Earlier, the girl had spoken to her friend. Winslet could be trusted because, according to him, the detective agency in the city was engaged in investigations. The lady was offered to have everything done for her, so she wouldn't even have to get her hands dirty. She just exhaled, raised her hand, and knocked on the door. Several minutes had passed since the Countess had arrived, and only silence was heard in response, which made the beauty doubt whether they would open the door for her at all. Almost immediately, Ariana wanted to know what the problem was. She expected a completely different approach. The blonde assumes that maybe they didn't hear her. Raising her hand, she starts knocking harder, which should seem louder. When the beauty was about to knock again, heavy steps were heard. Someone opened the door and thereby hit Ariana right on the forehead. The woman put her hand to her face. Everything seemed to be swimming before her eyes. But gathering her strength, she looked up, her pupils dilated in surprise. The young man looked closely at the guest, his light blue hair highlighting the look in his blue eyes, in which a question could be read. The first thing I wanted to ask was why such a handsome man works in such a place. He turned out to be more handsome than some aristocrats. The Countess ponders. The appeal to her dispelled all questions. Obviously, the man was only a face. Normal people do not address clients in this way. In any case, the heroine was going to tell why she came. The girl didn't come for no reason. Ariana wanted to tell a story. She was beaten to it. The stranger addressed her by her last name. They had been writing about her in the newspapers for some time now, and apparently the rumors had reached the most unexpected places. It was common knowledge that the lady had married a commoner to save her family from debt, but now she presented herself officially. The Countess thinks that it is not quite fair that they know about her, but she knows nothing about the detective. It would be good to introduce herself. The brunette exhaled. At that very moment, he decided it was time to reveal his cards. His name was Lowen. The young man repeats his name only so that the girl will believe him. because her husband has exactly the same name. The blonde raised an eyebrow in surprise. She didn't know that this name was common. Of course, it only evoked bad associations. The brunette decides to get down to business. He clarified why the aristocrat needed something in such a small office. Before that, only peasants went there. The countess remains calm and asks what the point of the question is. Her presence in this place was obvious. She came to a detective agency. The blue-eyed man seemed to be asking a silent question as the woman continued to speak, but in reality, her legs were quite tired as she walked to the place. The beauty asked to enter the house, and they let her in. When they sat down at the table from the stairs, someone came down. The brunette turned to the gentleman, asking what happened. Kaizen addressed his friend as Wendy, to which he responded too quickly. There was no point in twisting the names of others. The young man pointed his finger at the girl in surprise and asked if it was really a person in front of him. The blonde raised an eyebrow and said nothing. Kaizen asks if he is sleeping. The gentleman asked him to calm down, because in front of them there really was a real person. The heroine thought that they had no clients at all. The woman asks to get down to business, so as not to waste even more time. She wanted to give an assignment. It was unusual in some sense. The story is long. There was no time for all the details. But in short, the beauty wanted to know everything about her husband, who cheated on her. Madame does not understand why these two reacted as if they had seen a ghost. She was asked why she came to them with such a request. She found herself in a detective agency. Her friend said that it was there that there was an extremely reliable solution to all problems. Now the beauty wanted to know what they were doing, since it was not a detective agency. Wendy was cringing with discomfort, and his friend was laughing a little nervously. Their house looked more like an ordinary one, and there was not even a sign about services. It was a little unsettling. Before the woman could draw any conclusions, Kaizen jumped up and shouted that they would do whatever was asked of them, because they really were detectives. Carefully wiping her face, Ariana asked how much she would have to pay for such an unusual request. For now, that was what she was interested in. The brunette came up with a decent price in a minute. He wanted to ask for 300, but he didn't have time to finish, which actually played into his hands. For some reason, the beauty decided that 3,000 was what they were asking her for. She of course agreed, but to herself, she thought it was more expensive than I thought. Placing a basket that looked like a bag on her lap, the lady reached into it to get the money, or whatever she had to give for the services rendered. Smiling, Ariana placed a bundle on the table, a strange aura emanating from it, which made the two freeze. The detectives looked closely at the thing, wanting to quickly understand what exactly was hidden inside. But so far, this was leading nowhere. The woman wanted to get it all over with as quickly as possible. She reached out to take off her cape and show them the most important thing. As soon as the piece of cloth was removed, a figure appeared before the assembled people. Something ugly made one doubt the mental health of the countess. For some reason, Kaizen assumed that he was dealing with some kind of swindler, since it was impossible to sell something so ugly for such a large sum. The woman has a great plan in her hands. She asked to put the statuette up for auction on behalf of the agency, so she could come there. Of course, the lady would not allow anyone to buy such a valuable thing. She was going to buy it for her collection for exactly 3,000. The green-eyed man still acted as if this was amazing to him. He wanted to ask questions, but had to restrain himself so as not to offend the guest. While these two are thinking, Ariana takes out an envelope from her pocket containing a letter. It says where the auction will take place in a week. At first, the detective was surprised. This invitation was special, so Tillin was the one who started the meeting. The event sold only the most expensive works of art in the world. It was difficult to get in, and even more difficult to get an invitation. The brunette had heard about this for a long time. He asks a question, asking how something so ugly could be put up for auction. The words flew out by themselves. The blonde calmly continued to drink her tea. She remained motionless while the two asked questions, because she knew exactly what answer she would give them. Calmly looking from under her eyelashes, she answered that everything was possible. She had managed to confirm the value of the statuette, which meant that the issue was resolved. The woman does not plan to pay the full price, at least until her order is completed, but is willing to pay in advance. Wendy couldn't help but wonder why such a powdery method. It seemed like the lady was trying to launder money. The detectives did not want to take part in the machinations, The man showed with his whole body that this was not the best option. The blonde, remaining calm, replied that she had never done anything like that towards others. She had always only acted on her own behalf. The beauty guaranteed that no harm would come in any case, which meant there was nothing to worry about. Everything would be done in the best possible way. It seemed that the young man understood that everything would be fine, but doubts crept into his head. They could not begin work if they could not get an answer. The Countess thought that she would be refused, but obviously her order would still be carried out. Kaizen froze in surprise. He did not expect such a turn of events. The lady understood that it was better to explain right away so that no questions would arise. She simply wanted to engage in trade. No bypass systems. The guys didn't say it out loud, but they thought to themselves that it would be difficult for a girl like the Count's wife, who had done nothing all her life, to achieve what she wanted. From the very beginning, it was worth starting with prejudices towards the lady. She built a plan in her head to achieve the goals, and said, "I will declare myself at that auction." It was at the event that the lady would prove that she was not an ordinary person. Before leaving the estate, she said that they would see each other again very soon. The door closed, and almost immediately Kaizen pounced on Wendy, shouting, asking what the young man was thinking when he agreed to such a proposal from the Countess. The brunette moves away discontentedly. He puts everything in its place when he says that his partner was taken in by the payment of 3,000. He shrugged his shoulders. It was just unexpected. He could have refused under some pretext after everything had been told, but obviously, in the opinion of the head, there was no choice. Blue-Eyed frowned. It was impossible to present the information that they were not a detective agency, but a secret organization under any sauce. They accepted the order, but in fact, they had no right to do so, since two of them had been in hiding for a long time. They were called the Nameless Order. Their company has been special from the very beginning, carrying out secret missions for Emperor Hector without any glory or honor. The ruler knew that he could always rely on the guys, which meant there was no way out of the situation. Kaizen did not calm down. Besides everything, he would like to know how the lady found their estate at all. The realization came quickly enough. That idiot Winslet had probably let it slip as usual. He had never been able to keep his mouth shut. If he hadn't been Duke Isel, he would have gotten what he deserved long ago. The Countess is an old friend, so of course the brunette helped her. But now it is the Order that will have to investigate the case of her husband who cheated on her. Slamming his hand on the table, the man shouts that they will not carry out the strange assignment. There is no point in taking it on. The brunette paces back and forth, saying that it would be perfectly normal to just say that they tried, but didn't dig up anything. Kaizen couldn't help but confirm that it was better not to interfere in family affairs. They wouldn't find anything, and then they would return the statuette. Blue-Eyed looked forward thoughtfully until he refused. He thought differently and wanted to express his thought. The hero asks what they are talking about. Yesterday they received the list. It seems the assistant knew exactly what the conversation would be about, so he asked carefully. The list of that case included the name of Count Astaroth, and they became interested in him at the time, but finding any information was almost impossible. The man's wife could help. Especially after he cheated on her, she is incredibly angry. That's how the investigation will find a new direction. Another suspicious detail was that such an aristocrat as Astaroth suddenly decided to engage in trade, at the very least, suspicious. Until they reveal the secret of their agency, the woman returned back to the residence. She was quite tired. The maid meets the beauty almost immediately, and here's the question: what happened to the people who were chasing me? Blue Eyes said it had worked. They had fallen for the trick and gone after Sarah. So now all that was left was to maintain the story that the lady had been in the bookstore. The blonde thinks that Lowen most likely ordered her to be followed because he became worried about the demand for a divorce. He did not want to lose his title. The maid stood to the side, wondering whether she should tell the mistress about what happened, and finally she began to speak. As it turned out, the Count had recently ordered the guest room to be given to Elena. Upon hearing the news, the woman froze. Her face twisted. The girl tried to dissuade the man, but he didn't want to listen to anyone. She didn't succeed, and now she's apologizing. The fist clenched with anger. The husband did not value the lady so much that on top of all this, he now also wanted to put his mistress in the guest room. The decision was immediately made to do everything right. There is silence in the room. The Count sits at the table thinking, while Elena pulls the rope near the bed. It seems that it does not work. The woman didn't like this. Usually they came to her in 10 minutes. But here nothing works, the blonde nodded. But it's hard to imagine that in such a house something doesn't work. It quickly became clear that the girl was simply being ignored. Ariana most likely ordered the servants not to come, because she was offended. Elena paces from side to side. She snorts when she starts to speak. She is not that kind of person. She would never do that. Lowen turns away. The sister grew up with the Countess. She cannot know her so poorly, and so blindly believe everything that is said. The lady does not see a problem in this. The girl considers her sister to be very kind, but her husband still contradicts her. Ariana is actually a very cunning woman. She will cross all boundaries to achieve what she wants. The blonde man tells about what the beauty did. She hid her infertility and married him, just to get rich. Elena calmly says that Ariana simply loves and values her family. She just wanted to save what was valuable to her, nothing more. This attitude towards his sister made the young man believe that his lover was a saint, that she was hated, and that she responded well in return. Covering her palm with his hand, the hero smiles and asks for forgiveness. She made a choice in favor of men. Leaving Ariana, she understood that it would be difficult. The girl seems to want to cheer up the young man. Maybe the lady was dear to the heroine, but still they are not relatives, so everything is not so complicated. Blushing slightly, Lowen gently stroked his beloved's cheek. They grew up together, but for some reason one of them is sincere, and the other is cunning as a hawk. Ariana really got married only for the sake of her family. It's the same as selling her body for money, but for some reason, the girl never worshipped her husband. The Count remains angry, because his wife used him only to save her family. Elena asks the Lord not to be upset if he is sad. She will be sad too. The girl knew how to manipulate, so she did it openly. Now that Ariana, who was like a family member to her, turned away, Astaroth is the whole world to her. For someone who has never experienced love in this world, such an appeal is ideal. The hero smiles and stretches out his hands to his beloved. Elena rose from the floor and sat in the man's arms. Hugs are the warmest thing in this world, the most tender. The hero does not see the other side of what is happening. The woman takes off her smile. She is not going to play games any longer. The former Countess Astaroth died when she was still quite young. After her death, the lady's daughters were raised by one nanny. This was her direct responsibility. The girls were the same age, so they always spent time together, so they always ate together, studied together, and also met new people. Despite how the two were related, one of them remained the famous daughter of the Count, and the other was destined to become a servant. Ariana was always the center of attention, but even though Lowen thinks the lady is stupid, she will do anything for the sake of her future. The blonde sits in front of her table, looking at her reflection in the mirror. The maid standing behind her noticed that something was definitely wrong. Moss, blue-eyed, asks if the lady will go to the Count. She still does not understand how a man can officially settle his mistress in a guest room on the estate. The maid came up with options of what could be done. She decided that it was necessary to immediately expel Elena from the estate. In response, Ariana only chuckled, asking again if this was really necessary. Surprisingly, the girl speaks about this with great doubt. Usually, if something inappropriate happens, she rushes to solve it, not like a locomotive. For her, it is something like a base. The maid recalls one incident. Once a boy said something bad to her, and she hit him in the face, and blood started flowing. The boy was a prince from another country, a high-ranking person. But now the Countess thinks that she doesn't care about Elena. Whatever the young man does, in public he maintains the image of a count. Even the emperor has no right to have a mistress and show her off in public. And Lowen, who cannot distinguish good from bad, is simply trying to provoke his wife into emotions. The woman can hide, moreover. If the public finds out that his mistress is pregnant, his child will hardly be able to become part of the Astaroth family. The Count can be entered into the family register, and thus he may receive some rights, but he will never be accepted into the imperial family because he is a half-breed. Lowen became an earl about 4 years ago, but he still doesn't understand how aristocratic society works, so he enjoys himself recklessly, completely ignoring his duties. Despite all the bad things, the company is thriving, all because of Cameo, who is in charge of finances. It is a very excellent company, which his father Falvin ran, and all the success is due to him. The lady wants to acquire a loyal assistant. She asks if the maid has a friend who is involved in restoration. As a rule, the empire is supported by rich collectors who came from the Republic of Renette. Everyone envies their wealth, and they envy the history of the country because they do not have a centuries-old culture that has survived countless traditions. It is the guests who show an unprecedented interest in antiques and works of art. For the rich, buying historical items is nothing less than an honor. The Countess has an idea. She knows what she will sell, and she knows that these people will clearly be interested in her product. They will even be ready to offer decent scenes. The girl remembers very well how everything was after the wedding. At first, Lowen was a wonderful husband. He always treated Ariana kindly. Her father even said that he could safely trust his daughter to such a guy. As soon as the man inherited the title of Count, he immediately showed his true colors. He constantly said that he was a busy man and asked to deal with the little things himself. Sometimes the lady asked for money and received monosyllabic answers or aggression. He ordered to spend less, believed that all money should be put aside and saved as much as possible. With each day that they spent together, Ariana began to hate the young man more and more. She no longer had the strength to endure it. She wanted to break free. The icing on the cake came when the Count was going to meet the Marquise to mend fences and refused to miss it because of his wife's birthday. Over time, the maids began to ask their mistress if she was going to tolerate such treatment any longer. Lowen often mocked them and threatened them if his orders were not followed immediately. One of the head maids has worked in the Count's family's house her entire life and considers Ariana her family, so she can't watch what's happening. The woman did not want to tolerate a man from an ordinary family who was absolutely no different from her. She did not want to watch how the man was destroying Astaroth's self-esteem. The blonde stopped all these actions. She reminded that after all, Lowen was a count and a husband. By mocking him, the subjects were directly mocking the lady. All that was left was to ask for respect for the hero. He deserved it. The wife was not against fulfilling her duties, just so that everything in the estate was calm. Ariana was remembering that conversation with the servants when a loud knock made her distracted. The door opened, and Astaroth ran into the room, looking furious. The blonde guy says from the start that the lady probably knows why he came, although in fact she should be angry, because the mistress has become a full part of the family. The woman was not going to continue to pretend to be innocent, but she really did not understand what was being discussed. The Count grinned angrily, asking if she was really that stupid. The gentleman tells about what happened. No matter how much Elena called the servants, no one came to her. If he had not been next to the girl, anything could have happened. She could even have gotten sick. The scream pressed on the eardrums. The lady decides to remain silent. Lowen may not know, but her sister clearly understands how the other servants treat her. They will never accept her, knowing what happened. The brunette knows how to act to get empathy from the man who loves her. She pretended not to know anything, continuing to pull the rope and look disappointed. The woman asks why the Count thought she was mocking his mistress. The angry voice is heard again. If the wife were a human, she would be angry at those who betrayed her. Astaroth obviously wants to take it out on his half-sister. The girl pretends to be stupid, asking the question, "It turns out you knew that this would make me angry?" The woman assumed that the young man did not understand anything. Therefore, he was behaving like a dog that had broken loose from its chain, the sarcasm irritating Lowen even more. The blonde was not going to let the lady do what she had started, and she would not be paid for running the house until her duties as a wife were properly performed. The heavy artillery was brought out. The master was not going to pay wages even to the maids. He looked calm on the outside, but in reality he was worried. I hope this will be enough for her to listen. The Countess chuckled and then rose from her chair to come closer. The only thing the young man could do as a worthy husband was to bring money into the house. The hero had no choice, because if he stops giving money, the woman promises to stop perceiving him as a count. She will not be able to do anything about it. Trying to remain calm, the gentleman clenched his fist tightly. He asked why the lady was behaving so rudely, as if she did not know what respect was towards her husband. Ariana could at least show respect for once, but for some reason she can't pull herself together. The woman chuckles, asking, "What do you mean by respect?" The deal that was made at the very beginning of the marriage was real. Now the beauty reminds that the benefit was obvious. They did not love each other and are not obliged to obey orders. Until now, the husband's minimal duties were carried out calmly, providing Ariana with an income. The hero won her indifference, and all his antics were let go. Now that everything has changed, the woman is not going to behave in exactly the same way. She is determined when she says, "Don't you dare come into my room and threaten me anymore." The gentleman impregnated his mistress, which meant he would have to deal with her on his own. Lowen wanted to add something else, but all he could do was clench his fists in anger and grind his teeth. Several days passed, nothing happened from the moment of the conversation between the spouses, so the lady even began to suspect that the young man would not do anything, and finally calmed down. If the hero really did lose the last bit of rational thinking and stopped paying money for the management of the house, one could try to cling to the fact that he was not fulfilling the terms of the marriage contract. The beauty understands that the reason for divorce is ideal, but she cannot hope for the best. Most likely, Cameo has already managed to tell the gentleman all the details, and he will never make the same mistakes, but on the contrary, will try to find a way out of the situation. In principle, the beauty understands that Lowen can calculate the salary for managing the house himself, so that this will not be a problem for him, although it is already clear what will come of it. Ariana wanted to somehow win Cameo over to her side, but it seemed she had no chance. The mistress was distracted by a maid who came running to tell her something. The brunette heard that a guest had arrived to see her. He did not introduce himself, but stated the fact that he and the lady had already met. It turns out they were familiar. While Astaroth was trying to think about who it was that had come, the maid, smiling, said that he was a gallant man. She had never met anyone like him before. The woman decides not to ponder, but instead heads forward into the guest room. She freezes in surprise when she sees who is sitting at the table. The same young man from the agency smiles, looking at the client. They have a lot to discuss, but first she asks the question, "What do you need?" Leaving his cup of tea on the saucer, the young man chuckled. Because it was not very nice to address a guest like that. He was behaving as if he was going to teach etiquette. This could not help but seem strange. Sitting down at the table, the girl said that she was asking seriously. Wendy was somehow very different from the last time they met. It was as if he had become a completely different person. The blue-eyed man smiles, remaining calm. Then he did not have the opportunity to dress normally, but this time it was decided to dress up in order to meet the Countess. The lady glances at the body. The familiar outfit is simply blinding. So it's not all just like that. The young man, it seems, did not choose the best profession. His acting skills are better than the actors in the theater. The hero smiles as he answers that in his profession, this is an equally important skill that he cannot refuse. The girl nodded. She already understood that they had come to her. I wanted to hope that the young man had made progress in his investigation, so he came. But for now, he remained silent. While the conversation was developing, a guest arrived at the house. She was calmly moving along the corridor because she was going to go to her brother, who was a count. Stopping near one of the doors, the girl froze without words because she noticed something beautiful. There was a brunette sitting at the table, and it was clear who he was talking to. But for the green-eyed girl, this did not provide any information. The face instantly turns red. The beauty wanted to ask what this handsome man forgot in her brother's house. Usually, he didn't often have guests that could interest the miss. Ariana doesn't show her joy, but she is pleasantly surprised that, despite the fact that she gave the order only recently, she has already received some good news. As Winslet said, it seems to be a pretty good detective agency. They have proven themselves. First of all, the statue was put up for auction. As the Countess said, it was accepted without question. The woman knew that this would happen. Astaroth has quite a lot of connections when it comes to art. Their family really has a deep history. It is impossible not to notice that the man is talking about something he knows. The blue-eyed man smiles easily. Of course he knew a lot, because it was part of his duties, especially when it came to the Countess. This time the hero was not mistaken, and it was difficult to say anything in response, so the woman decided to wait until he said something else. Wendy says that she is already on her way to inspect the pawn shop, which the Count envies. Thanks to this business, he makes a lot of money, but despite its fame, there are not many customers. The girl raises an eyebrow. Her husband said that clients don't influence because he deals with big deals. The answer is surprising. When big deals appear, usually a lot of rumors appear, no? Usually in social circles, there are gossips among acquaintances. So the fact that a man earns large sums and not a single rumor is suspicious. Everyone knew that despite the fact that the Count continued to spend money on entertainment, the treasury was still sufficient. It would be a good idea to first find out about the money that was suspicious. Wendy asks to look at the Count's ledger. It is in the hands of a property manager named Cameo, who, as his wife says, never even thought of considering everyone's property as a management contract. The brunette calmly offers to steal the book, which surprises the lady. In any case, we are talking about an interim report on the request. A strange idea is heard. The man wants to accompany Ariana to the hotel in auction, most likely as a nobleman, and assures that this is exactly the same feature of the job. Besides, the young man is good not only with words. He has a plan on how to check whether someone really bought that statue for $3,000. The blue-eyed man leans closer and, looking forward, says in a quiet voice that it is easy for a person doing such work to receive money from a noble person, if only he decides. The girl was not particularly surprised. She did not see any difficulties in such work. Wendy declares herself as the Duke of Sale from the Duchy of Corcel. This country has few connections with other countries. There is simply no available information. This option is the best one to remain as invisible as possible. The Countess, when she was still little, once saw the father and son of the royal family, after which they seemed to disappear from the face of the earth, extremely secretive people. Wendy wants to finalize the plan, so she asks if the lady has any connections with the nobles of the principality. She nods, calmly answering, none. The only information that the beauty has the right to provide is that her late father was friends with His Majesty the King. While the acquaintance was thinking about something, the girl asked if she could go to the detective agency, just to get a report on the progress of the case. Are you going to go to that dark alley again? The question went unnoticed. The Countess believed that if you don't do anything suspicious, the alley is not dangerous. The detective disagreed. The lady's presence alone is already striking. It seemed like the man was concerned about safety, but as soon as he opened his mouth, everything fell into place, because if a client gets into trouble without paying, it means extra problems. Until the very end, the lady tries to find a way out of the situation, asking if it is possible to send a letter, but she is refused. There is a risk of substitution or leakage of valuable information. It was decided that the best way would be nothing other than to hand over the data in person, which surprised the beauty. It was simply an investigation into her husband's infidelity, but there was too much secrecy around it. There was no point in continuing the conversation. In any case, the hero was going to pass on the information as soon as he returned, and if anything else appeared, he would come to the Count's house, just like then. The action changed too quickly. A quiet voice asks her to wait. She doesn't understand what the excuse will be that a stranger is coming to the house. He shrugs his shoulders. There are many good excuses. Blue-Eyed offered to be the Countess's lover, which surprised her. Lowen has Elena, which means nothing like that will happen. On the contrary, the man will understand how dirty he acted. The brunette considers himself attractive enough that he believes the cover will work even better than might have been planned from the start. The Countess laughed. She thought that she would refrain from lying that she had a lover, because she was not so offended as to behave that way. It wasn't offensive, really. The young man couldn't help but ask again. The woman was, of course, angry. But she was angry not because of the betrayal, but because the contract was broken, leaving her with nothing. Perhaps if not so much time had passed since the wedding, the beauty would have been surprised, sincerely. But in that case, she did not care at all about this man. At first, like everyone else, the Countess had hopes for a happy married life. But very soon she realized that this was also stupid. She was also going to betray her husband, but she was only doing what she deserved. First of all, if the girl takes revenge on dirty people and becomes just as dirty, the lady understood that she simply has no other options for what to do. Wendy chuckled, obviously. If the heroine still doubted and did not want to become the same as her husband, the detective could play her admirer. The smile makes one doubt the reality of what is happening, as if the brunette is trying to gain confidence in himself in this way. There was a temporary silence in the room until the Countess let out an irritated breath. The man was definitely working in the wrong place. He definitely should have become an actor. In any case, Ariana would be sorry to waste her acting skills on something like this. She asks to get up from the floor. Her husband, in theory, should not care who his wife spends time with. An ordinary owner from the county came because he was interested in Astaroth's collection, which is what the Countess should be interested in. Nodding, the young man leaned down to gently kiss the lady's hand. It was not his style to contradict the client's wishes, so he had to obey. Before finally leaving the estate, the hero promised that he would come to the girl on the day of the auction, early in the morning. The blonde cannot help but notice that the man perfectly observes palace etiquette, even better than Lowen. The Countess was not against the development of events. It seemed that the man really was good at impersonating a nobleman, which meant that there would be no problems. As soon as Wendy left the estate, the lady went to the corridor that led to her room, where she ran into Florrie Green, the younger sister of Lowen Astaroth. From the very beginning, the woman was interested in what she had forgotten there. According to her, she did nothing other than examine it, and many interesting things were discovered in the lady's box. The blonde wanted to leave as quickly as possible, so when saying goodbye, she turns towards the door. Halfway there, the Countess stops her. She immediately noticed something was wrong. Florrie is calmly asked to leave the ring in place, the very one that she put on her finger. This was a big problem. The girl had never been caught before. The lady thought that she could blame everything on her blindness, as she had done before. But this would no longer work, because before her was no longer the sister of a noble husband who had paid off all the debts. The woman calmly advises him to finally stop petty theft. She herself knows that this is not the first time, and now she wants to put pressure on the girl. Green's eyes widen noticeably when she asks worriedly what they are talking about. The lady is not going to ask for the return of what was stolen from her, but she does ask her to stop stealing. Sister Astaroth was surprised that the woman knew everything, but a second later, she was already furious. Not understanding why the attitude towards theft had changed, she sharply raised her fist in the air, abruptly releasing the ring from her hand. Florrie let it roll to Ariana's feet. She screams loudly, reminding that all the money received in the county was brought by her brother, who came from a family of commoners. The woman thinks it is ungrateful not to want to lend even one ring when there is a whole bunch of trinkets in the box. She is cut off. Stepping forward carefully, in a lowered voice, the lady says that all the clothes and jewelry that Florrie received were given to her by Astaroth. In this case, it is alms. It seemed that this time the girl would go with her tail between her legs. However, something had obviously changed. Perhaps she had been like this from the very beginning. The heroine continues her speech, examining Florrie's body. She suddenly notices that the dress also belongs to her. Green screams, asking to stop what is happening, and swears that he will return everything. She is afraid that they will undress her. Jumping up, the woman rushed to the exit, before disappearing. She promises that she will definitely tell her brother everything, and then the lady will not be able to wash herself off so easily. Kneeling down, the girl picks up the ring, examines it carefully, and only then realizes that this is not just jewelry. At first, the lady did not notice, but very soon it became clear that this was the ring that her mother had worn when the girl was still a child. Florrie runs down the hallway. She looks furious. What happened won't go away so easily. She is struck by the fact that Ariana has almost completely changed. The girl promises herself that the beauty will definitely get it from her brother, all because of her behavior. She bursts into Green's room and starts screaming almost immediately in order to evoke pity for herself. 5 minutes later, the woman told the whole situation, and this made the man angry. The green-eyed man does not understand how his wife can want her jewelry back without knowing Florrie's situation. As Green said, even her favorite ring went into the trash can. Her husband assumed that his wife had decided to leave him, and he certainly didn't like that. The young man is shaking with anger. He does not want to show his emotions, but what is happening makes him indignant. The woman collects jewelry for each social season and cannot give even one ring to her friend. The blonde understands that she did not see any new jewelry, which means that perhaps the girl is hiding them somewhere else. The green-eyed man is thinking about whether they really want to divorce him. He is interested in whether she has her own money for the move. The door opens. A familiar voice is heard. The blonde notices that while she was gone, discipline in the house became completely useless. This is not the first time this has happened. The young man turns and greets his mother in surprise. They really haven't seen each other for a long time. She notices that the Countess has forgotten her place, which means she will have to make her bow her head again. Ariana heads forward down the corridor, followed by the maids. All three of them aware that a storm is coming in the form of Lowen's mother, who meets them outside the mistress's chambers. The woman bows her head and greets the guest. She thought that they would gather with Flory, but she didn't even show up. The blonde grins, since Ariana knew that there was someone new in the house. She should have said hello even earlier. The Countess taps her fan on her hand. She can't help but remind him of the fact that Lowen gave a decent amount of money to save his wife's family. If it weren't for him, the servants and the mistress would have been out on the street long ago. The lady continues to gradually raise her voice, asking how it is possible to be so ungrateful. One of the maids intercedes, asking to be more careful. The Countess received her title personally from His Majesty the Emperor. The green-eyed one is not embarrassed by anything. Ariana should have married someone other than Lowen, since she obviously expected to be treated like a lady. After a while, a real scream was heard. It even attracted the attention of other maids. A woman screams that she is the mother of Count Astaroth, the mother-in-law of the lady who received the status from the Emperor personally. The blonde doesn't like that this impudent servant ignores a person like her. It's wrong. Bad attitude towards elders is not the best option. Obviously, no one was taught manners. Ariana smirked, calmly asking if the head maid was really rude. Just because the mistress didn't set an example, the answer was an easy solution. A second later, the beauty snatches the fan from her hands. It seems that the lady just said that elders always set an example. Subordinates behave exactly as they are shown, and therefore the Count became an adulterer because his mother set such an example for him. The woman is Count Alphen's mistress. Ariana knows this, and these words cause a wave of horror on her interlocutor's face. The mother showed her son an immoral example. That's why the son turned out like that. She should raise the child correctly, and then the Countess will try to raise the servants. The maids start to giggle. In fact, such an attitude could only make people laugh. The head maid exhaled. Finally, the lady spoke out. This even calmed her soul. Up to this moment, no matter what that lady did, the mistress remained as calm as possible. The Countess actually felt a little better. She couldn't stand this kind of treatment any longer. Dealing with members of the Green family was quite annoying. She wanted the auction to happen as soon as possible. A few more days pass. The morning arrives on the day of Sotelin's auction, which everyone had been waiting for so long. Preparations began from the very morning, because everything had to be done perfectly on time. Ariana is the first one to be woken up by the maids so that they can finish her hair, accessories, and of course the right dress. The lady has prepared herself perfectly. Leaving the room, she looks at her outfit again. At the final moment, she wants to look beautiful, so that everything is perfect. Of course, the girl didn't choose all this attire herself, so now she turns to Gwen with a question, not understanding whether it was necessary to dress up so much for an ordinary auction that would end in a few hours. The blue-eyed woman smiles. She heard that the lady would go to the event with that special man, which means that she should go to the auction only in such a way as to attract as much attention as possible. Everyone in the house heard about his appearance. Miss Flory was very disappointed. It was not the first day that she had asked everyone what family that elegant young man was from. She wanted to find out as much as possible, but what she got was definitely not to her liking. Gwen tells the whole story. Green was surprised that the man came without an appointment. Usually, if guests just come, it means they have a pretty close relationship. She could have misunderstood. The lady sincerely hopes that what happened will not be a terrible misunderstanding. Of course, everything will be fine. The maid assures her of this, and adds that it would be good if some nice gentleman could wipe the Count's nose. The woman listens attentively to everything that is told to her and thinks for a second. She has some idea that will definitely be better than any other. The maid is surprised when asked whether it is necessary to have some aristocrat to wipe Lowen's nose. After all, the lady could handle the task herself. After such a strange conversation, the two followed to the guest room. It was time to leave, so the lady decided not to delay any longer. It could do no good. Flory is sitting on the sofa next to the Count, who seems to be trying to extract as much information as possible. She is not surprised that she is seeing the brunette for the first time, although she knows most of the people in social circles. The green-eyed one doesn't know what personal space means, so she pushes forward, asking once again how long such a handsome man will stay in their estate. It seems she is completely charmed by him, but they don't even answer her. The woman presses. She leads the conversation to the most important thing. Because if Wendy has not found a place to stay, he always has the right to stay with Astaroth. Her brother will gladly provide a separate room. Although Flory is not the mistress of the house, she invites guests with such pride. She is not at all embarrassed by this fact. So the mistress decides to stop all this. She coughs, seeking attention. The brunette is the first to turn towards his companion. He jumps up from the sofa, leaving Green completely alone, because he hadn't felt much interest in her before. The young man comes closer and carefully takes the beauty's palm in his hand. He expresses his feelings, telling how long he waited for the Countess. Smiling, the gentleman asks if Ariana will allow him to accompany her to the auction. She says that it would be an honor for her. Such a story makes Flory freeze in confusion. She thought that the young man was a closed-in, cold person. The girl, of course, does not want to leave it like that. She grabs the hero's forearm with her hand, not letting him go far. A scream will burst into the room. The lady has never been able to control herself. She reminds that they were talking, and it is indecent to leave someone with whom you are in conversation. The brunette becomes cold again. Looking with a piercing gaze, he asks again if they really had a conversation. Bursting in and just talking is not a dialogue. You understand already. The green-eyed girl is horrified. She was just put down by someone who is lower in status than her brother. The girl asks how he dares to behave like that, especially being in the house of Count Astaroth. The blue-eyed man comes closer and, leaning down, calmly reminds her that when building her authority, it would be a good idea to learn self-esteem. Otherwise, the girl will always fail. For the first time in her life, Lowen's name means nothing, which amazes the girl even more. Usually, as soon as she said his name, everyone immediately bowed their heads, thinking that it would be better that way. The lady is so ashamed that she can no longer be in the company of those who despise her. Grabbing the hem of her dress, the lady turns towards the door. As soon as the pop was heard, the man exhaled with displeasure and turned to Ariana, judging by the way she was being treated. It was impossible to tolerate this. It turned out that the beauty did not tolerate it, but simply respected the family. After all, until recently, Flory was the sister of the husband who paid off Astaroth's debt. Most likely, the girl ran to her brother. If they stay in the house, they will soon be tortured verbally and morally. The blonde asks if the offer of escort is still on. She would like to stop somewhere before the auction. They should hurry, just to have time to complete everything. Half an hour later, the two found themselves at the entrance to the central bank of the empire. Lady Astaroth was greeted. She came personally to the VIP branch. The man apologizes that she is not being received with due dignity. If they had sent a message in advance, the bank employee has already visited the estate. The girl shrugs her shoulders. She needs to take care of something, but it is not too important. The beauty calmly asks to provide her with detailed information about the financial transactions of the Astaroth family. She needs to understand who makes all the payments and how much money is spent on this. With each line that the lady reads, her eyes narrow more and more. She is disgusted, because in the check records, there are only two people. The girl does not understand whether this is her account or Lowen's family. It is very easy to write checks from the checkbook provided by the bank in advance. All you need to do is take a check, and then the person wishing to buy the item writes down the price of the item, signs it, and gives it to the seller, who then takes the paper to the bank, receiving money directly from the account. Typically, only the signature of the account holder is valid for a check, but the woman's husband insisted that his mother and sister could also write checks in the name of Astaroth. In a situation where they had to leave the property to the son, since it is inherited only from father to son, the Countess allowed them to write checks, but the volume of their consumption exceeds the imagination. The expenses for the house received from the guy were insufficient. The two bought 8 bags a month, when their cost was the same as the average salary of a normal person. Even Lowen should realize this. He seems to think that the expenses remained the same as before the wedding. The heroine turns to a bank employee. She asks to make it so that only her signature is valid on the checks, since the husband is not involved in the management of family affairs. Only the wife's signature will be valid. The brunette nods. It would be best to send a request, and then it would be reviewed. The blonde knew that everything would be exactly like this. Usually a wife cannot come alone, but the bank will take into account the difference in statuses and will easily review the request. Initially, the girl did not want to use their difference in status in this way, but she was simply left with no choice. It was not only about preventing the family from spending money for a while. Later, the merchants who come to collect the payment will discover that the signature is invalid and will go to the count. Then he will be able to see the extravagance of his mother and sister. A mountain of checks will fall on him. Sometimes it's nice to watch someone else's family quarrel, especially when it involves these three. The lady hands the paper with her signature to the worker and breathes a sigh of relief. A lot of people had already gathered at the auction. One of the waiters said that the representative had provided a whole table for Astaroth and allowed her to look around. The smile lights up by itself. The beauty is pleased to see his care. The lady asks to convey her gratitude. Conversations are heard around. Because in the program booklet, it is written something about the birth of the goddess of beauty, who will be the decoration of the finale. Wendy asks her companion if she is nervous. You can almost hear the voices of anticipation. It can't help but make you worry. The lady shrugs. She doesn't care, she asks in response. Are you nervous? The brunette nods. They both know the origin of the statue, so it is impossible not to feel something more. It is not clear why Sotelin joined the lady's plan. It turned out that her father worked with people who loved art, regardless of their status and age. The auctioneer, Watt, was close to the count, but his friendship gave him the opportunity to show things to the gentleman. The blue-eyed man quickly realized that the man valued the statue as, "This thing deserves to be the last at auction." The man does not understand whether the thing has changed somehow without his knowledge. A loud voice is heard. It is time to start the auction. The lots are gradually sold for different amounts, from several thousand to hundreds of millions. And finally, the time has come to present the highlight of the program, the last lot, Birth of the Goddess of Beauty. The statuette was discovered during the time of the Thousand-Year War. It is a masterpiece that survived even the chaotic era, which means the initial bid will not be small. They will ask for a decent amount for it. As soon as the cape was pulled off and the creature appeared before the people's eyes, everyone in the hall froze in horror. They did not understand what was so special about the ugly statuette, which in fact, on the contrary, scared everyone away. Whispers begin around. Not everyone understands whether it is really the goddess of beauty in front of them, and Wendy only notices that the statuette is the same as then. Only because of the lighting, it has become even uglier to the eye. Bidding starts at $1 million. Whoever wants to buy it will have to raise the table. The whispers become even louder. People don't like the thing, but since Sotelin put it up as the last one, it means it's more valuable than it seems. While everyone is bargaining, and the price gradually reaches $5 million, the Countess comes forward and offers a price of $30 million. Silence immediately reigns. No one wants to pay more than $30 million. Some people think that since a young woman pays such money, it seems that she doesn't understand art and came to spend someone else's money. Everything is obvious. Not knowing how to evaluate works, she spends such a sum only because it is the last lot. Women's extravagance is well known. The gentleman says that if there are no more applicants, the price will be announced 3 times and then sold. The buyer is asked to go up on stage and pick up the statuette. As soon as the girl went up, people immediately realized that it was Ariana. It was impossible not to recognize her. Wendy grimaced as he listened to people belittling the lady. Everyone knew that the lady had married a commoner due to lack of money. They said that the previous earl had squandered all his property due to his passion for collecting. The young man is happy that the lady does not hear anything. If she hears, it will destroy her. The blonde carefully examines the thing, as if she wants to notice something beautiful. Ariana asks if this statue really belongs to her, and if she can really do whatever she wants with it. And in response, she receives a calm nod from the organizer. The photographer tries to choose the best angle from which to take a photo, but he thinks to himself that the statue is so ugly that no matter how he photographs it, it will still not turn out very well. The heroine, without thinking twice, lowers her hands and drops the thing right onto the floor. She is not at all embarrassed by anything because she knows what she is doing, unlike everyone else in the room. The brunette, who remained in the chair, wants to clear his throat. Of course, if you do something like that, then it is clear that the person has gone crazy. His heart almost stopped from such a trick. Suddenly, the atmosphere changed, because some people began to notice something inside. Under the plaster that was crumbling into pieces, there was a hidden sculpture that no one had noticed before. Raising the thing up, the lady carefully shows it to everyone gathered. Now it lives up to its name 150%. The statuette is glowing. About 10 years ago, an interesting conversation took place between the Count and his assistant. The brunette asked why the man did not take him with him when he was going to buy something strange. The assessor, Pablo, was disappointed that the young man decided to leave without him, simply because he did not have time. Thus, he again fell for the scammers who ruined everything. The blonde asked if there was anything strange in the things he had purchased, and received an ambiguous answer. Out of 5, 1 was a fake, and then a statuette was brought that looked terrible. Being still very little, Ariana did not understand much, so she spoke as directly as possible. The thing was made carelessly, but it was noticeable that the balance was maintained, which meant that, most likely, there was some secret hidden there. Pablo noted that finding a composition when creating a sculpture is already a sign of talent. He also did not understand. The little girl did not understand why the result of the work of a person who created such a unique but ideal composition was exactly this. The blonde assumed that they were looking at an unfinished work by a famous sculptor, or that it was conceived and sculpted by different people. The thing was similar to the one created during the 1,000-Year War. Ariana, oddly enough, knew about the actions during the war. It itself lasted about 100 years, but was so cruel and bloody, as if it lasted a millennium. That's why it was named that. At that time, many relics were damaged, so talus are very rare. Those that were preserved were considered valuable for their existence alone. They can even be given the status of national treasure if they have sufficient artistic value. Pablo praised the gentleman because this time he had invested his money quite profitably. Despite his ugly appearance, the statuette was valuable, but the other thing turned out to be a fake, which was a shame, because Astaroth had bet everything on the publication. The little girl noticed some writing on the other side of the purchase, and the brunette said that their text was encrypted and he hadn't figured it out yet. The Countess sighed with displeasure. Usually the author's name is written so that everyone knows it. Why is it encrypted here then? Of course, deviations from the norm do not just exist, so surely even this should have had some explanation. The young man suggests that the lady try to find a solution to the problem so that she would be the one who would know the history of the figurine. Now the lady, after so much time, tells the whole story to Wendy, who remains extremely interested. Obviously, the lady's successes were crowned with success. The girl began by deciphering the text, and after learning that it read, "The Birth of the Goddess of Beauty," she thought that this work did not at all correspond to its title. The appearance of the figurine was far from the standards of beauty. This could be noticed even with the naked eye. Then the thought came to mind that the plaster could be just a shell. Eventually, the Countess read several books about the 1,000 Years' War, and finally found evidence that in those days there was a fear that art objects would be broken or stolen, which is why sometimes valuable sculptures were covered with plaster. Due to the long history, the Countess was convinced that a real goddess of beauty was sleeping inside. After that, she needed to find out what the real sculpture was made of. To check it, it was necessary to break the plaster. In case of a mistake, the thing could be damaged. So it took several years to clarify this issue, and when everything became clear, the lady broke it right in front of other people. She wanted to attract attention. In order to earn money and get a divorce, it was necessary not to spend so much time. The blue-eyed man noticed that the lady managed to do everything as it should be. In all the news brochures and newspapers, they only write about the Countess. The man asks what the girl will do next. It seems she said that she wants to go into business. She does not want to tell the truth so that her plans are not stolen. Suddenly, the carriage jumps up. 2 of them are thrown up a little. The young man reaches closer and asks to be silent for at least a few minutes. Carefully adjusting her hair with her hands, the Count pulls the fallen hat back onto the top of his interlocutor's head so as not to spoil the image. The woman is a little surprised. Usually men don't understand such things, the brunette nods. most people really don't understand. But the hero is definitely not ordinary. The Count really did differ from the others in appearance. He was handsome. He noted that it was also better to tidy up your appearance before going out, because the photographs would stay forever. The capital's residents are always thirsty for news. Journalists who heard the news about the auction have already gathered in front of the Astaroth estate to take interviews. The newspapers write about the Countess, and the photographer Sauzerin was interviewed especially for this moment. He was responsible for the shooting that day. The man tells everything in detail. The Countess, according to him, looked at the thing for a long time, and then, without hesitation, threw it on the floor and broke it. The auctioneer also did not know the truth, because he was only told that the statuette was from the time of the Thousand Years' War, and the beauty herself understood the value of the sculpture. When Kaizen read the newspaper, he was surprised that that ugly statuette had become so beautiful. Until now it seemed to him that it was something from the realm of fantasy. The brunette turns to the gentleman and asks if the young man found anything interesting while he was in the mansion. As it turned out, he only managed to look at the living room. It seems that the best option would be to search the living room or the office, or even the Count's bedroom. At such moments, it is easier to say that they really are on the Emperor's orders so that the Count does not interfere with them. Blue-Eyed advises to calm down. If you behave so brazenly, there will be an uproar in the House of Lords. Now they are just waiting for a pretext to remove the ruler and take over the government. To screw up with the aristocrats could be the worst mistake, because otherwise the master will be worse off. They must prevent what will become a threat to the head of state. The main task of the nameless knightly order is to find weaknesses in members of the noble faction that supports the House of Lords. Count Astaroth is close to Marcus Felix, the central figure of the faction. Due to his background, he has no influence in the party, but as it turns out, he is in charge of its finances. The young man asks why it is impossible to enlist the lady's support if she asked for help with her husband. The man brushes it off. The Countess is quite smart. They will be exposed if they approach the matter so easily. Wendy suggests trying to gain trust first by doing honest work. They haven't even been paid yet, so they should be more careful and loyal. Count Astaroth has a workshop on the outskirts of the capital where purchased items are restored. It is worth starting from there. The green-eyed man specifies what the gentleman will be doing at this time. According to the Countess, her husband entrusted the management of all his finances to a man named Cameo. After thinking for a few seconds, the man suddenly realized who we were talking about. This horrified him. At this time, the Count's financial manager sits in the hall and listens to Green's scream, who does not understand how Ariana became famous because of some auction. The statuette, which appeared in the newspaper, is valued at tens of billions. The assistant said that the wife is not capable of receiving such sums, but in one night, she earned more than the lady could notice. The red-haired man suggests calming down. In fact, the lady did not receive anything. The Countess does not intend to sell the item. She has never put items from Astaroth's collection up for sale. At this rate, the woman will not be able to pay compensation in a divorce. Even if she has dozens or hundreds of such relics, there will be no money until she sells them. Most likely, the whole performance was a warning in response to Elena moving into the guest room. It is best not to irritate the lady until the miss gives birth in peace. The young man nods, but says that he cannot leave the woman who is carrying his child, where the servants live. Cameo advises to find her a separate house. If it suddenly turns out that the Count has an illegitimate child, there may be a disruption to the plan, Lowen snorts. He found a maid, but he will be sad not to see his beloved every day. The red-haired man doesn't like this arrangement. It's not good to distance himself from the Countess. The child must be excluded from the list of aristocrats in the name of Ariana, so that he can be the official heir. But if the lady refuses, this is impossible. No man can get along with a cold girl. The Count notices that she is cold even in bed, both on their wedding night and after several years. In the days when the two slept together, the guy was constantly under pressure. The woman never complained, but she didn't look happy either. Even in bed, she thought about asserting herself and getting her spirit down. At first, the Count thought that the problem was in him, but now he realizes that this is not true. Cameo gets up from his chair. He is unhappy, and he doesn't care what Ariana is like. The most important thing is that she sits quietly and doesn't interfere with their plans. Attention to Astaroth will cause problems. The family must be calm. As it was since the collapse of the family, the master must show his value as a partner. The man presses, he asks if the young man can handle even one noble lady. A little scared. The interlocutor snorts. Of course I can. It's easy to make one girl keep quiet. The lady made a smug noise. As a husband, the blonde man should take responsibility and scold her. It couldn't be any other way. The lady has been walking around the same place for about an hour. She begins to doubt whether she really knows her way around. Mrs. Helen gave the address, but it is very difficult to find the house. The maid runs up to the mistress. She asks what happened, because it seems the stranger has been circling in one place for a long time. It seems the woman was taken for a suspicious person. Deciding to use the help, the girl hands over a piece of paper with an address. The brunette says that she sees this address for the first time. The blonde freezes. Helen obviously wrote the wrong coordinates. Perhaps the little girl knows Daniel right. It is he who the Countess is looking for. The stranger is suddenly surprised. She quietly asks if the woman has come to her father. The child never expected to meet someone today who would want to see a man who usually doesn't appear often in the social world. The blonde adjusts her hat and lifts it up a little, showing her face. Only then does the maid realize that Lady Astaroth is standing in front of her. Taking the Countess, the girl takes her to the estate and seats her at the table. She almost immediately brings a cup of tea, for which she is thanked. While the heroine was talking to the girl, a brunette came down, sat down next to her, and carefully asked what the lady was doing in this house. Daniel Wright does not understand why the Countess returned. Although he had already sent a letter refusing the offer, he had previously been a good restoration specialist. The Countess apologizes for barging in, but she really needs the skills of a friend. She will need a specialist to help. The man sadly lowers his head. It cannot be said that he does not want to help. That is why in the letter he gave advice about the statuette. This advice seemed to help. Despite this, a person does not have the right to do the restoration on his own, all because of the incident that happened, which left a mark. Daniel Wright was once an outstanding restorer, who was called the Hand of God. He passed off a copy as an original and gave it to the customer, and sold the restored work on the black market. The man was almost immediately criticized, then called the hand of the devil, and was expelled from the profession, and was never offered work again. Wright didn't think that the girl who knows best about what happened would ever come to him with an order. The beauty nods, but reminds that her uncle was also a victim. Then, the restorer briefly pawned the work at a pawnshop, since he urgently needed money for his son's operation, and the pawnshop sold the original on the black market, returning the copy. In reality, only the pawnbroker was blinded by the money. Lowen owns it. He said that he had completely entrusted the management of the pawnbroker to the employee and did not suffer from this scandal in any way, simply firing the unnecessary person. Wright still believes that he is to blame for everything. In any case, he should not have used the customer's property as collateral. He was blinded by the desire to save his son. The previous count had done too much for the man at the time, and thanks to him, the client, Duchess Eitzel, forgave the mistake. But the damaged reputation could no longer be restored. Even if we ignore that incident, his hands have already lost their former dexterity. Daniel abandoned this business for too long. Of course, it would be better for the beauty to find another restorer. She no longer had any other choice. The pawnbrokers and restorers are in a mutually beneficial relationship, and Lowen's pawnshop is the largest in the capital, at least for the sake of earning money for a living. Restorers are forced to reckon with the pawnbroker, who gives the most work, so everything will reach Lowen's ears. The lady's plan doesn't require much to be carried out. Uncle is the only one who doesn't have a relationship with Green. She has never met a more talented restorer than him, and her good name can be restored with the help of her abilities. The brunette is still not sure. He is afraid that his name will stand in the way of his virtuous woman. He doubts until the last. The girl continues to talk about how there are no other people to work with. She can only succeed if Uncle Daniel is with her. At this point, she strongly resembles her father. The man recalls an important conversation with the Count. Pablo always said that his daughter had talent. She would become an outstanding collector. Even Astaroth thought that his daughter would truly have a happy future, that her talent would make her path bright, and that she would be one of the most outstanding collectors. The assistant asked Pablo if he was annoyed by such words. In his opinion, this is not the case. For him, it is normal to want the next generation to be better. Only then did the blonde confess to Wright that this was the same reason he collected relics. He simply wanted to give his daughter the best. The Count never once in his life regretted that he had a daughter and not a son. Even if she could not inherit the title, she would still achieve greatness. Now, having met the Countess after so much time, the man could confirm 100% that the Count was right about Ariana. The gentleman asked the little girl to call her brother. They still have many topics to discuss. The girl asks why they suddenly decided to call another person into the room. At the cost of that mistake in the past, the young man saved his son's life. He grew up healthy and became like his father, only he inherited an even more amazing talent. The lady's father always said that a man always wants the next generation to be better. These words sounded strange, because a man always wanted to be the best. Now, looking at his child, the gentleman was happy and understood the meaning of the words. The boy definitely has talent, and sometimes he even has wonderful, unique ideas. Despite all his abilities, due to his father's disgrace, the entrance to high society in the restoration sphere is closed to him, and therefore the dream is destroyed. If Daniel works with the lady, he will still end up being just a stigma on her plan. But the better idea remains on the plan. The brunette insistently asks to resort to the services of his son, who really can be useful. New wine should be poured into new dishes, and this is how a man will work. He will meet all the requirements of the mistress, whatever they may be. There was a knock on the door. A voice was heard when a blond man entered. He asked if his father really called him, and almost immediately, Dylan introduced himself. Wright smiles and says that the girl sitting at the table will hire him, something that makes both of them freeze in horror. It seems they won't be able to accept it. Daniel continues to talk about being responsible for the boy's abilities. He once again asks to hire him, promising that he won't even have to be trained. He already knows everything. The blonde thinks for a moment. The gentleman would not embellish anyone's abilities, even his son, and the guy is not connected to Lowen in any way, and this is already a victory. The lady exhales and begins to speak. She will certainly hold the guarantor accountable for poor work, but there can be no doubt at all. From the very morning the man came to his wife's chambers, he hits the door with his hand, trying to get through to the lady, who seems to be in no hurry. The green-eyed man doesn't understand where the girl went. Usually at this time she always works with documents in the office. Flory standing behind grins. The blonde couldn't help but assume that the lady had gone out to have fun somewhere with that handsome man. They had also gone to the recent auction together. The Count asks again. He doesn't quite understand what kind of person they're talking about. He wanted to know more. Green asks in surprise if he really didn't know. A second later, the beauty rushes to the young man and starts screaming that the woman has gone crazy. She openly invited her lover into the house, as if she had no conscience left at all. The girl tells all the details that she knows. The man called himself a businessman from the duchy, Baron Sear. They looked at each other with passionate glances, and right before Flory's eyes, they took each other's hands. With every word, the gentleman became more and more angry. His face showed all his anger. The Countess seemed to have completely forgotten about manners. The blonde couldn't help but notice that, in addition to this, the Baron treated her with disdain. He mocked her, saying that a commoner had no dignity. His sister must have said a lot of bad things to him, since he had such an impression. Green may seem strong, but in reality, she is a gentle child. Ariana dared to put pressure on her with her position, and even be rude to her. The woman is caught up in thoughts of superiority. The young man jumps up and runs down the stairs. Flory quietly and worriedly asks where he is going, although she herself is hiding a nasty smile. Astaroth just returned home. She is holding the arm of a guy who is supposed to help her with the restoration, but so far, no one knows about him. The girl quietly notices that it is not Baron Sear, but her brother cannot be stopped. He rushes forward to confront his wife about the lovers. The man grabs her wrist with his hand, shouting that the noble lady has lost all shame. She unceremoniously brought into the house someone who shouldn't even have been shown. The lady doesn't understand what they're talking about. It looks like Flory said something incomprehensible, just to ruin the girl's next few days of peaceful life. The blonde pulls her hand away. It really hurts her, and this treatment reminds her of bandits. They usually behave in much the same way. Without thinking twice, the Count switched to Dylan, but he quickly reacted and twisted the gentleman's arm. The green-eyed man did not understand where the guy got so much strength from. He didn't think that the estate had such bad guards, and asks them to take the crazy man away. The lady agrees that his behavior really doesn't look like a normal person. As soon as Dylan realized that the Count was in front of him, he immediately let him go and apologized. He really thought that someone dangerous had entered the house. The young man doesn't like that his wife laughs, but she's not going to put up with the fact that she's being limited in anything. The conversation returned to its original course. The husband asks how the girl dared to bring a lover into the house, while he himself pretends that he did not impregnate the maid and did not settle her in the guest room. The lady has no shortage of sarcasm. She admits that she was wrong and should have taken a lover from within the family. It was not worth bringing him from outside. The woman knows everything, so she will follow her husband's advice. Next time she will definitely find someone inside the house, preferably from the servants. As soon as Dylan and Ariana walked to the table in the hall, the lady asked for forgiveness. She did not know how it happened that he was mistaken for a lover. Be that as it may, the girl knew that her husband would make a fuss if he saw the restorer's son, but she still had no choice but to bring the guy to the estate to show him something. The golden statuette that is placed on the table was previously covered with plaster. Most of it has chipped off, but some remains, so it needs restoration. Many people are talking about the sculpture, so the man will definitely become famous as soon as he restores it. The green-eyed man looks enchanted. He was trained in this kind of thing, but this is the first time he receives a real assignment. Before providing the work, the Virgo reminds of one condition. Working on this thing is a pretext for an official meeting with a specialist. In reality, there is something else. The girl hands over the paper. Because of her crazy husband, she has to act secretly. Lately, in the Republic of Linnet, vintage plates exported from the Empire have become popular. They say that items that show history are valued higher than untouched new items, which can help you move up the shopping ladder. If the damaged plate can be restored, they can directly use the history that others so desire. In such cases, ordinary restoration is not enough. If you restore the plate to its original appearance, the vintage feeling will disappear. You need a product that can be used later. The girl will need such an assistant who, together with her, will come up with a good way to implement the plan. Dylan's life has reached a turning point, but the lady feels that he will have a major impact on the entire field. The lady once again asks the man if he can fulfill her request, and fulfill it in the best possible way. The blonde definitely agrees. "I'll try." The next day, the heroine is almost signing the documents. She wants to rent a place for a while, even if it is a little shabby. The man asks if it's true that they discussed this before. The girl continues to press. She asks if she can give her the room. It turns out that it's not about money. The blonde asks with interest what could be more important than money in a detective agency. Wendy had already told the lady never to come to the alley. The brunette does not understand what the beauty expects by staying in this house, where there are only men, whom she does not yet know very well. Remaining calm, the heroine says that for her this is the norm. She was only going to drop in occasionally for a conversation. Well, Ariana is not such an ardent person to have a lover. She is not going to use this place for something strange. The woman just wanted to start trading. Because of the goods for sale they talked about, a workspace would be needed. The two exchange glances. They begin to understand that if they allow the girl to be nearby, then it will be easier to keep an eye on the Count. Wendy informs us that the rent will cost a lot of money. While the lady looks around, the brunette asks if we need to report to His Majesty. We rented out the headquarters that he provided to us. The man thinks that it would be better to tell Wendy he is the commander, but this is only remembered when some kind of mess is brewing. Since the hero refuses, then he can be called by his title, the second prince of the Crossell Duchy. A smile appeared on the young man's face almost instantly. It is not clear why the conversation about the prince suddenly came up. The friend clarifies whether this is really a bad topic of conversation. If Kaizen were a prince, he would trumpet about it at every step. Just to brag, the brunette exhales discontentedly. No one knows how he would behave then. The two continued talking until a loud scream was heard from the other room. It was immediately clear that it was related to Ariana. Something had happened to her. While resting, the girl suddenly opens her eyes. She looks around, not understanding what happened at all. Wendy is sitting on a chair nearby. The blonde asks for forgiveness for making everyone worry and causing trouble. The blue-eyed one asks why she lost consciousness. Apart from a bump on her head, no serious injuries were found, so she was moved to the bed. It was time to tell the whole story. The lady saw a beetle, stepped back, and hit her head on the shelf. Kaizen caught that bug before leaving. It was a relief. The brunette calmly carried the beauty back. She was light. It wasn't difficult. Ariana thanks her, but if she is truly grateful, the man asks her to tell the story. He wanted to know why the girl decided to rent this place. Since the lady is getting a job at the agency, Wendy has the right to at least ask what kind of business the heroine is going to open. In some ways he is right, so it will not be possible to refuse. Exhaling, the Countess calmly explains everything. She will conduct trade with the Republic of Linnet. People from there prefer to buy items from the Empire, which has traditions. Wendy didn't notice, but at the auction, 2/3 of the visitors were from Linnet. There won't be any need to trade in large volumes. A friend who studies in the Republic knows the rich people there. The same friend was ardently against his girlfriend's marriage, so when he finds out that she wants to earn money to get a divorce, he will definitely be happy. Blue-eyed asks in surprise if it really will come to a divorce. They did not ask for an immediate divorce, so it seemed as if the lady would continue to live next to Lowen. Because of the contract, the lady cannot initiate the divorce. The husband must be the first to ask for it. Then the lady will cover the penalty, for the accumulation of which she, in fact, opens a business. The young man, realizing that the client will get divorced, for some reason blushes. This information seems to warm his soul. They will talk about this when compromising information is found. The conversation has moved in the right direction. Astaroth asks how the investigation is progressing. The agency is working on the case, putting it above all others. The lady nods. She also says that it's time for her to go. It still took longer than originally planned, so she gets ready. Oddly enough, Wendy decides to walk her to the end of the alley. The young man just wants to take care of safety. The client waves him off. I paid you for the work, so you don't have to worry about my life anymore. Very soon, a reception at the palace, hosted by the imperial family, marked the beginning of the social season in the country, and the sun was shining brightly that day. This is the largest reception, invitations to which are sent in the name of the emperor to all the aristocrats who are included in the list of nobles. It is regarded as a great stage from which one can predict the life of high society in the coming season. Who will approach the emperor, what they will discuss, what clothes they will wear, and what music they will enjoy. A full-scale surveillance war is unfolding in the room, and the participants prepare for this reception with all due care. Green is angry that she is forced to go to her first reception in an awful dress. The dressmaker shrugs her shoulders. If the lady doesn't like something, she's not obliged to buy it. Her order schedule is full. She won't be able to stay long. The woman is no less dissatisfied with what is happening than the host. She came because the Countess called her, but she is not even visible. In any case, the imperial reception is an important event. The girls from the Green family will sort everything out themselves, but they are not happy with this. The fashion house only works with aristocrats, but no one gives the right to treat the Count's mother like that. Flory thinks it over again and decides that it's better to keep a low profile. She points at one of the dresses, offering to take it, because it looks good. The blonde sits down on the chair and exhales with displeasure, but still agrees. Since her daughter says so, then any dress will suit her mother. Within moments, the room is idyllic. They choose more outfits while the dressmaker wonders if the Countess knows about the behavior of these two. The designer is about to leave. She has already gone out to get into the carriage and accidentally attracts the attention of Elena, who is right next to the Count. The social season is starting soon, which means that Ariana has presumably already chosen a dress for herself. Something like this makes the blonde angry. He knows what the prices are at the fashion house. Society extolled the beauty for acquiring a stunning relic, and she immediately began to squander money, and she herself would not have a penny left. The man does not like the prospect that his wife will spend all the money and then ask for more to manage the estate. Elena calmly asks not to scold her sister. The brunette wanted to appear as nice as possible, so she justifies all the actions. The wife of an aristocrat is obliged to wear a beautiful dress and take part in the reception. If she comes in an out-of-fashion outfit, everyone will say that Astaroth's family has gone bankrupt. The green-eyed man doesn't ask her to wear unfashionable clothes, but she buys more expensive things. He himself needs to. It's time to stop. It is always better to spend money according to your capabilities, which are also not infinite. Someday the funds will run out. The young man looks at his mistress, and of course gives an example of her outfit, which is too simple, especially for Elena. Looking down at the floor, the girl reminds him that she is only a servant, that this is within her capabilities, and that she is not allowed to ask for more. The hero cannot help but support the beauty. He gently places his palm on her cheek and straightens her hair. A smile immediately lights up on her face. It is impossible not to notice that Elena is not just a servant. She is the Count's beloved, and the one who carries his child, the future heir, under her heart. A second later, Lowen takes off, and the milliner must be stopped immediately to pick out clothes, especially for the upcoming reception with the Emperor. The heroine screams that she doesn't want anything that's offered. She's really thrifty, even though they won't go together. But at home, the young man will arrange a luxurious celebration, especially for her. A beauty will come to a special event without an invitation and wear a beautiful dress. Astaroth asks if she will really be allowed to do this. The answer is a slight nod. The Count will do anything for his beloved, just so that she can be happy next to him. To begin with, the task will be to stop Ariana. She will not stand in the way. The maid standing next to her smiles. The man treats the mistress very carefully, even enviously. Once again, Elena understands that it was not in vain that she made such sacrifices. She does not mind being called a mistress or being completely subordinated to her. During the day, Ariana received a proposal from the Count, who asked to have dinner together, although previously he had always spent his evenings only with his personal servant. The woman first asks if Flori and Madame Green are invited. The assistant nods. It seems that this is a family dinner, which means that some important topics will be raised there. Judging by the fact that the young man called his allies, he is not only going to raise important issues, but will also eventually drop a bomb. Most likely, Elena will be there too. The blue-eyed girl is asked to tell the gentleman that the girl understood everything, and she is asked again whether she really agrees to go to that dinner. The blonde chuckles. After all, they live in the same house. It won't be possible to constantly avoid each other. And on top of all this, she's curious about what the man decided to start a conversation about. The lady had asked to prepare some medicine for her in advance. She would definitely have indigestion. Evening came. Lowen said that before the social season ended, they would have a party at the estate. The blonde asks again what the point is, and understands that it seems that this is why they all gathered. There could be no other option. All that remains is to find out why the event is taking place. The families who were planning the reception sent out invitations about 2 months ago, although it is possible to organize a party with only a few guests. Lowen hardly needs a small reception. He nods, saying that all that is needed is a big and lavish party, few people, not so much fun. Ariana interrogates him to the last. An important decision must have a reason, and finally he decides to tell the truth, while artfully lying that it is time for Flori to get married. The young man has a plan. He thinks that everything will work out perfectly. As soon as the event begins, his sister, as a member of the family that hosted the reception, will greet the guests with him. It was at the meeting of aristocrats that the girl would be able to meet young people from noble houses. A good idea. But only Ariana understood what this could lead to. If only Flori were an aristocrat, everything would be much simpler. But such a direct presentation of someone whose social position is not entirely clear can raise a wave of indignation. The Count's mother smiles, asking how the man came up with such a wonderful idea. She also agreed that it was time for her daughter to find a decent husband. Lowen is beaming with happiness. He should have taken care of his sister's situation a long time ago, but he was so captivated by the duties of the Count that he completely forgot about everything else. The blonde dreamily tells how she wants to marry at least a count, because the man is lower in status than her brother, a sort of second-rate character. The Countess listens to the discussion of the upcoming event, but as she gets bored, she abruptly knocks on the table with a knife, attracting attention. I would like to be relieved of participation in this plan. The green-eyed man presses. It is the mistress of the house who is obliged to organize receptions and invite guests. This is not an issue that can be refused. The woman nods, but if the husband understood his responsibilities, he would not have made the decision to hold a reception alone. Flory intercedes, because she doesn't want to be left without a holiday. In her opinion, it's enough to simply prepare food and send out invitations. It won't be difficult for her sister. Only Astaroth understands the whole point. For a successful party, you will have to choose a theme that does not match the others. Prepare a variety of food and drinks. Analyze the relationships between those you plan to invite. And finally send out the invitations. Without waiting for an answer, Flory rages, ordering her to honestly say that they simply want to leave her without a groom. Her sister is afraid that the girl will marry more successfully. Ariana calmly asks how a girl can think like that and hope to find a husband among the glamorous guests. It becomes clear that a normal groom will not be found. The woman decides that the Countess should not be allowed into the organization, but this does not suit the Count either, since he initially wanted to arrange the reception for Elena, not for his sister. Doing the tedious preparations is almost a nightmare. The young man does not want to join in. Ariana gets up from her seat, saying that her husband will do all the work himself. Before leaving the room, the lady smiles. In the end, it shouldn't be difficult. After all, it's just a party. Since Lowen thinks that there is nothing difficult, he will definitely cope. Already in the corridor, the lady hears her mother-in-law's voice behind her, who menacingly asks if she can really leave like that. Green-eyed wants to resolve her personal issues. She wants to understand what receptions they will take part in next season. This needed to be done 2 weeks ago. Since the lady had become lazy, Green had to organize everything herself. She hands over a piece of paper. It will be enough to send letters that in the circled circles, Flory and her mother-in-law will participate in receptions instead of Ariana. On paper, only the imperial reception and receptions of influential families are noted. They have no conscience at all, and of course this makes the Countess very angry. The choice of the parties of the social season that the family will host is the prerogative of the hostess. Giving such a list is the same as saying, "You are not the hostess, but I am." Last time the woman was disgraced and decided to restore her power in this way. She does not want to remain a nobody in the estate where her son supposedly rules. Commoners like Madame and Flory needed a good reason to attend receptions, and that was Ariane's letter, in which she informed them that she could not attend in person and was sending others in her place. Since Astaroth is not very fond of receptions, she always gave up her seat to the 2 partygoers. It was not a problem for her. The relationship with the woman's son will not improve, but she believes that her daughter-in-law will give up her seat. The blonde lowers her hand and nods, promising that she will take it into account. A smile immediately appears on her face, because it is clear that the girl will not be able to do anything. She is too weak to resist. The maid, standing nearby all this time, snorts, completely not understanding how one can be so ill-mannered, especially while in someone else's house, being a commoner. The lady openly ignores Ariana's position as the mistress of the house. Gwen asks her not to let such rudeness go unpunished and to somehow take revenge, not to delay the answer. The lady smiles. She knows that the plan has long been in action, which means there is nothing to worry about. When the time comes, justice will definitely be restored. Some time passed. The day of the imperial reception arrived. Flory and her mother got ready in the form in which they appeared. The girls even looked like aristocrats. No matter how much the lady asked Baron Alpin, she could not get an answer. She even thought about giving up. But now, her efforts were not in vain. She finally came to the largest reception in the country. The woman did not understand why Ariana was taking so long. She herself would not go, but for some reason, she did not show up. At a luxurious reception, there should be good people, corresponding to high society. There is silence in the house, not quite understanding why no one is there. The madam decided to go to the maid with a question. She asks where the Count went and receives the answer. He has already left. The man, before the imperial reception, agreed to play cards with friends. The mother immediately turned crimson with anger, because this was her first grand reception, and she was being left alone. There's nothing to be done to avoid missing anything. The 2 hurry out into the street. Fortunately, the carriage is already waiting for them, so they don't have to delay too long, which is definitely good news. After 20 minutes, they arrived at the place. As soon as the girls went outside, they quickly realized that it seemed they were in the wrong place. There was simply a wall in front of them. It seems that the coachman dropped them off at the wrong place. They need to get to the main entrance quickly so as not to miss the beginning of the event. Turning around, it becomes clear that the carriage has left. The girl doesn't understand what to do, because the imperial banquet is about to begin. Madame is angry. She bragged to everyone that she was invited. She can't leave empty-handed. To get to the main entrance, the carriage will not appear. You can get there by walking, Florrie agrees. She just wants to get to the hall as soon as possible. The green-eyed girl yells at her daughter to hurry up. She can't put all this off even for half an hour. The journey should ideally take no more than half an hour. Finally, the two crawled to the gate. They were exhausted and spent more time on the road than expected. Aristocrats were already gathering near the gate, ready to attend the reception. The blonde is crying that her legs are about to fall off. Her mother is yelling at her, noting that this is not the biggest problem now. Instead of regretting, she should quickly fix her hair and clothes. The green-eyed woman promises herself that as soon as they return home, she will definitely order that coachman to be fired. He does not deserve such a responsible job. To begin with, the lady wants to put aside all doubts about what is happening and instead enjoy the banquet. She has always dreamed of being next to high-ranking people. The people around were surprised. They couldn't help but notice that these two were very tired, as if they had just run a marathon. But they, with their heads held high, walked towards the entrance. There is a man sitting at the entrance who controls the flow of people. He cannot miss a single detail, and so when they handed him a piece of paper with the inscription Astaroth, he only raised an eyebrow. The old man asks again if they really came from the Count's house, and then begins to check the lists. He couldn't have missed the two, because it seems that there was something wrong with the pass. The blonde wonders why this process takes so long. They didn't check the others' invitations so carefully, and let them in after a little friendly chat. There was some discussion about the fact that there really were some problems with the invitation. It was from the imperial family, but something was definitely wrong. The man notices that he remembers the faces of everyone listed in the noble almanac, but it is not Countess Astaroth in front of him. He shouts, "How dare you pretend to be another person? This is too much." Madame recoils in horror. She does not consider herself someone who would pretend to be another person. She shouts back that she is Astaroth's mother and received this invitation from her daughter-in-law. The man standing at the entrance does not believe this to be true. The imperial banquet can only be attended by persons listed in the noble almanac. An invitation is needed to find out the date and time, but it is not a pass. I've encountered such people before. Guards appeared behind me, and they grabbed the girls by the arms. The invitation was most likely stolen, but for theft and passing someone off as a noblewoman, it's easy to get a prison term. Madame remains white, completely pale because of the last words, which, like a cherry on the cake, left her without an answer. They are going to send them to prison. The woman continues to scream, asking why Count Astaroth's mother is being arrested. She does not want to be taken away from the hall she was about to enter. Astaroth plays cards with his friends. Soon a servant arrived to tell them that the mother and daughter tried to enter the reception and were arrested. It remains only to confirm that this is the Count's family. The green-eyed man doesn't understand what they're talking about. He doesn't believe that his mother and sister will be sent to prison. If you think about it, they said that they were going to an event. It seems there is a connection. The event originally existed only for those listed in the Grateful Almanac. It was so clear that the young man did not even think that they were talking about the imperial banquet. The man walks down the corridor. There are only arrested people around, and in one of the cells sits Madame and Florrie. They are both sobbing uncontrollably. What is happening is weighing on them morally. The blonde begs her son to dismiss the soldiers. They said that these two are posing as nobles, although there is nothing wrong with bringing an invitation and going forward. The Count squats down next to the bars and explains that the event is only for aristocrats. Madame does not understand how in such a place a piece of paper with a signature cannot be enough. While the mother continues to talk about how they were instead of Ariana, the man breaks down. The Empress is hosting the banquet. No one will dare to pass the invitation to someone else, unless they have a legitimate reason for being absent. Green feels devastated. She really thought the invitation was enough. Ariana didn't say anything, and of course she deliberately set the family up. At such a moment, the gentleman is not even bothered by the fact that something like this happened. He is worried that if information comes out that a non-aristocratic family behaved this way, the Count's reputation will be destroyed. The young man is experiencing real horror. A million thoughts are spinning in his head, but none of them are real. He does not understand what to do to fix everything. Ariana is calm because she doesn't really care. Lowen has no idea how to deal with this, but of course he will deal with it himself. There is no choice. Footsteps are heard. The girl almost immediately rises from her chair and sees her husband in the doorway. She calmly asks why he returned so early on such an important day. The blonde doesn't even bother to greet the lady. He almost immediately rushes towards her and raises his hand with all his might in order to then slap her. Behind her stand the maids, who did not expect such a turn of events. They shout to the mistress, asking if she is okay, because due to the blow she fell to the floor. The girl touches her cheek, which is completely red. But even in this state, she shows with the help of a gesture her desire not to interfere in this whole situation. She will sort it out on her own. The young man persistently asks whether the lady had arranged everything on purpose. The conversation is about the imperial banquet. The lady deceived her mother and Flory. They decided that they could enter by invitation. The two of them remained in the imperial prison. They simply have no choice and cannot get out of there. They tried to enter by invitation, but they were arrested for trying to impersonate aristocrats. The blonde gets up and sits back down on the chair. She nods. It was all on purpose, but she never said that they would be able to attend the banquet by invitation. Ariana thought that the two would decide to keep the invitation as a souvenir since it was unusual. The Count kept shouting. Until now, they attended any event with one document. This time, they decided to follow the same strategy. The Countess calmly asks if it is true that Mother does not know the generally accepted rule that only aristocrats from the noble almanac can attend the event. The young man came to vent his anger. Such behavior is unacceptable. Ariana did not force anyone to go to the banquet. It is not her fault. She is addressing her husband. If I were you, instead of being angry, I would try to save face. The green-eyed man risks drowning in what is happening, and if he does not want to drown, he may well ask for help. He should discuss this issue with Cameo, his personal assistant. The anger has already been vented. A mark remains on his face. The blonde is worried. It even reflects on his face, in order to at least slightly hide his shame. The young man asks the maid to call a doctor. The doctor applied an ointment. It will help the wound, but later there will be a bruise. The lady assures that everything is fine, because fortunately, she does not need to go out too often. She can continue to hide or cover the bruise with makeup. The only thing the guest could say was that the lady should take better care of her health. The future of the Count's family depended on her, and if her health was bad, nothing would work out. The lady insistently asks Gwen to leave them alone and temporarily remain outside the door. As soon as silence fell, the conversation turned to Elena and her pregnancy. The Count said that the child would be registered under the woman's name, using infertility as a reason to register him in the family nest. Hearing this, the doctor winces in horror. The man waves his hands. He agrees that the beauty is not in the best health condition for conception, but she is definitely not infertile. It is definitely something else. Shrugging her shoulders, the lady reminds that when they talked, the Count looked confident enough. The brunette does not see the point. The gentleman cannot know what even a doctor who has been monitoring his health for several years does not know. The beauty is fine, moreover. The problem is most likely in the graph. But since Elena became pregnant, most likely, this is just an assumption. The blonde asks what the doctor wants to say by this. In fact, it is not normal for a healthy couple to try for years to conceive a child, so the man continued to look for clues. It seems that something suspicious was found in Lowen after all. The issue is serious, so the doctor decided not to talk about it until he was sure. About a year ago, the young man hired a personal doctor and said that he would personally take care of his health. Since then, the family doctor has not been able to examine him calmly. But since the gentleman had a child, obviously everything is fine with him. The lady nods. She only needs to find out what the basis is for the fact that she is infertile. The man asks in surprise if he is really under suspicion. The lady waves it off. Of course, someone else reported her, and it seems the lady even knows who they are talking about. The information could only have been leaked by someone who was close to both Elena and the Count. For example, Barras. First, we should check the man. He is probably involved in this. The doctor raises an eyebrow. He doesn't understand why the conversation suddenly turned to his son. He remains outside this whole picture, somewhere outside the framework. It is bad to have an enemy among close people. It is right to trust, but you should always check all the details, just in case. The woman asks if the doctor will help her with the investigation. She sounds and glows with hope, and when she gets a positive answer, she breathes a sigh of relief. In the hall are Camille and Loan. They are again discussing the topic tied to the Count's sister and mother. They need to decide something about what to do with them. Obviously, the blonde can't leave his family in prison. The young man can say that they are important to him and ask to return them back to the estate. Cameo resolves the situation. If the man can't find a way to save face, then it would be better to leave them there as impostors. They did not pretend to be members of the imperial family, but only pretended to be aristocrats. It will be easy for the green-eyed man to write a letter to the emperor and explain everything. If he writes that everything happened because of the maid, then the emperor will not bother punishing the nobility and creating unnecessary problems. The mother and sister will be released from prison in a couple of days. There remains one more solution. Even better, it will be possible to blame the imperial servant who accused them of imitating the aristocrats. It could be said that the mother and sister had come urgently to deliver a message. It could be said that they had brought Ariana's invitation to confirm her identity, but the servant had misunderstood them and sent them to prison without listening. The servant must understand the Count's anger, but the worst thing is that the relationship with his wife is worse than ever. Maybe the mother did not know the rules of etiquette because she was not an aristocrat, but she should have suspected something when Ariana gave her an invitation. In that case, those two would not have spent a day in prison. They could always blame the servant and make sure that there were no more questions. Of course, the servant will find out that there are such stupid women in the family, but this is less humiliating than telling the whole of high society about it. The young man clenches his fist tightly. He can no longer hold back after everything that has happened. He has worked so hard for so many years to get rid of the image of a commoner, so he is ready to do anything. The decision is made quickly. It has already happened. And since it was the day of the imperial banquet, the news spread quickly, which means it is too late to try to do more. The Count is afraid that there is no way out, but he is not going to sit idly by. Camillo nods. Of course they will do something. There can't even be another option. Something more interesting must happen in social circles than the disgrace of the Count's stupid family, so that everything will immediately change. There hasn't been a suitable event yet, but the young man suggests creating something on their own, and they'll get to work very soon. Wendy meets with the guest right from the morning. There are a lot of things again, but they all need to be for the project. It turned out that he met with Dylan because the young man arrived earlier. The hero greets the lady with a smile. She nods in response. Enthusiasm is good, but you can't overdo it. It's not good to be nervous while working together. The girl wants to somehow soften their relationship. It is impossible to work together comfortably if Ariana is treated like a boss. A successful partnership is built on equality. The lady was the first to come forward. She already addresses him by name, which means the hero has the right to also switch to you. He thinks until the last, because before him is a noble lady, after all. After some time, the blonde finally agreed to call Ariana by name. They figured that out. There were still a few tasks left that needed to be completed in the next few days. Wendy brought in another box and put it in the middle of the room. The lady immediately noticed that something was bothering him. The lady even expressed gratitude, but she received no answer. Ariana asks if she needs to pay for the ride, and when she hears a negative answer, she is left even more confused. The girl doesn't understand until the very end why they are treating her this way. The brunette asks how they are treating him, because obviously he is not happy with everything. He just didn't say anything until this moment. Addressing people as you is not so bad. It is a wonderful term. However, it seems too cold. I want a different attitude. It will be better. The girl asks again in surprise. She doesn't think that's possible. Wendy doesn't look like the kind of person who cares about how she's treated. The Countess asks if the young man was really upset by the way he was addressed. Dylan is Dylan, and a man has to be addressed more respectfully. Blue-Eyed asks if this form of address will remain between them. He wants to say something else, but at that moment, his gaze is drawn to the imprint on his cheek. There is still a red mark from the hand there. The mood in the room changes. The brunette rushes to the girl, asking who did this to her. He does not understand whether it was an accident or not. The eyes reflect genuine anger, which is difficult to hide. The young man is not going to retreat until he finds out the whole truth. It seems that this worries him a lot. The beauty did not expect such an approach, so she blinks her eyes in surprise. She has no other choice but to tell the truth, which will be carefully hidden. The Countess assures that no one touched her. Everything is not as it may seem. Ariana accidentally hit herself. Hearing this, Wendy menacingly declares, "This is nonsense. You have to gradually give in." The woman even put on makeup, so she has no idea how it happened that everything came out. If you think about it, only one person in that house can hit a beauty. The brunette is furious. He sincerely does not believe that the girl wants to continue living with that man one-on-one. He is obviously not himself and can do even more harm. The best options are to either kick the Count out or live separately for a while. The girl raises an eyebrow. If it were possible to just kick him out, I would have done so a long time ago, but I don't intend to leave the house. Most of all, the master wants to protect his wife. The child of his mistress can become an aristocrat only in one case, if the mistress registers him as her own. Everything is easy, but only while the woman is alive. Wendy remains adamant and suggests defending herself better, so that there are simply no misunderstandings in the future. Here, it seems, the dialogue reaches its peak. Astaroth snorts, saying that this does not belong on the Duke's list of concerns. He should think about something completely different. Once again, the girl remarks that they should concentrate on work. Wendy repeats the same thing in response, but only adds that it is in his own interests for the lady to be safe. Someone needs to pay the rent. Dylan watches silently from the sidelines, and with each word, he becomes more and more uncomfortable. After 5 minutes, he finally asks if he needs to go out and not interfere with the conversation. He doesn't want to get caught in the heat of the moment. The woman exhales. Only with the help of these words does she begin to understand how unethical her behavior was. It was wrong of her to behave like that, but there is still time to fix everything. Looking at Wendy, the lady asks for forgiveness. It is obvious that her words and actions upset him greatly. She did not want their usual conversation to end like this. The young man himself does not notice how his face becomes slightly flushed. This surprises him. The beauty notices that she acted confidently, but when her husband slapped her, she felt a little uneasy. Blue-eyed asks how awkwardness could arise when this feeling should have belonged to another person. The heroine is of course playing to the audience, she agrees, but she herself does not know how to get rid of the strange feeling inside her heart. Still, there is no need to worry. The young man will definitely pay for everything, and then he will understand that he should have behaved completely differently. Their family always had different values. The girl offers to help even more. According to their agreement, the hired worker is obliged to do everything to the maximum. But since he is even ready to protect the lady, he must definitely find out everything about the gentleman. The lady also addressed the acquaintance as Wendy. She and her husband have the same name. It would not be very pleasant to address them by the same name. He was given a nickname, but given the situation, everything is suitable. It is time to choose a nickname for the girl. The heroine thinks, and after a second suggests calling her Nana. It's not a nickname, but all her close friends call the lady that. This option is not bad, it's just right. The brunette nods. Now they are partners too, which means the work will go even better. Now there will definitely be no problems, and everything will be as good as possible. After such a conversation, the hero decides to go down and check what is going on there. He wishes her a good job. The blonde breathes a sigh of relief. It seems he is satisfied. The lady brought the statuette. She is meeting with Dylan. This is an important meeting for her. It would be better to use all the techniques that the guy's father gave to restore her best condition. The hero nods. He promises Ariana that he does everything in the best possible way. He has undergone training many times, and with such a wonderful hostess, he is sure that the first real case will go perfectly. In addition to the figurine, the lady takes out a plate from the Count's estate. Such things are expensive and difficult to throw away. Even if they are broken, the thing can be used for restoration training. In fact, after hearing Ariana's words, Wright thought about everything alone and made a test fragment. It was specially created for such a task. The finished fragment, as it turned out, was not made from a vintage plate. The girl has the right to examine the item and also see the restoration method itself. Thus, she will learn everything in detail. The gaze stops on the box that was placed on the table a few minutes ago, and it immediately catches the eye that the joints of the plates are completely painted. The blonde looks quite happy that his work is to the liking of the owner herself. He specifically used resin to add color, thus making them even more unique than before. Ariana liked the idea quite a bit, but she didn't know how to explain that the color of the painted joints was too cute. She needed something more elegant or more expensive. She spent some more time thinking hard, and then the lady suddenly decided that a good idea was emerging in her head, which was definitely worth turning into reality. Smiling, the beauty asks Dylan to do everything a little differently. She does not reveal the intrigue yet, but it is clear from her face that she really wants it. The method will be important for future promotion. Wright, as a diligent worker, listened to the lady, but it seems that the method she found did not seem possible to him. Then the lady asked what was bothering the hero. She asked to try, even if the end result would not be the best. The green-eyed man nods. He has no right to refuse, but asks to give him at least a week. He needs time to choose the optimal degree of fixation for the relics. Ariana smiles, answering almost immediately. A week is not a problem if the man copes with the task. It seems that it will only be easier for everyone. In such times, it is necessary to use the trust fund that the beauty's father left so that the husband does not see the expenses. The girl hands over a piece of paper. A certain required amount is depicted on it. Dylan will need enough money to buy all the necessary materials. Very soon, it will be easier for him. He just needs to finish the work. The blonde looks at the check and feels as if his soul is leaving his body. The amount is incredibly large, and it is impossible to even comment on it. Of course, Wright initially suspected that he was working with a person from another world, but now he was 100% sure of it. The lady only smiled calmly. The Count arrived in his mother's room. He arrived at the first call. They say that she was shocked and bedridden, but it seems that she had a lot of energy to turn the room into a mess. Tables and chairs were scattered around, vases were broken. The green-eyed woman cries, but as soon as she sees her son, she is distracted to start complaining. Everyone has probably already seen the news, which means that the entire empire will soon be aware of what happened. Even people in secluded towns will know absolutely everything. People call Madame and Flory vain women who do not know their place and also believe that they, as people from an ordinary family, only disgrace their count. This machine of these rumors can no longer be stopped. Madame seems completely unconcerned about her son, as if she doesn't care. She's only worried about what to do with the parties or how she'll appear in high society again. Madame had asked Baron Alpin for help in advance, but he still hadn't responded. He answers letters about the secret meeting within an hour, but this time he decided to ignore the girl again. The young man does not want Ariana or Cameo to see him struggling in this situation. The Count tries to maintain calm and asks his mother not to worry. Soon the rumors about what happened will be forgotten. The woman doesn't believe it. In high society, all they do is gossip about them. It's scary to think what will happen next. However, as soon as something more interesting happens, everyone will forget about the incident. The event cannot be hidden, but it can be covered up by something more large-scale. Mother suggests spreading rumors about the shameless Ariana, but she is refused because otherwise Astaroth will be involved again. Looking out the window and smiling nastily, the gentleman assures that he has a good plan. Since the wife got involved with her husband's man, he must deal with her assistant. 3 days pass. Ariana's room in the Astaroth estate is in complete silence. So far, no one bothers the lady. She is happy that everything is just like that. The woman gave Dylan a week to complete the mission. 4 days left. 3 days have already passed. The wait is unbearable, but this is a really important mission. The blonde wanted to come up with another topic so that she wouldn't be forgotten, but so far, she had problems with her imagination. For now, Ariana has nothing. She remains dependent on her husband, but her face is related to her business. After the auction, the lady was often invited to auctions and exhibitions. She was obliged to take advantage of this. If the lady who became the goddess of beauty attended the event, it would become popular. Despite such a privilege, some people were suspicious of Ariana. Many thought that the girl was just lucky. She couldn't calmly show her face after she behaved too openly. But this time, the heroine was going to dispel all doubts. The auction was a carefully organized event. It was time to show her real knowledge at a real event, so the Countess needed to choose the place carefully. The theme that Ariana explored concerns the love for heritage that is passed down from generation to generation, and the place where this can be shown is the first public display of the Imperial Museum's collection. Marquise Lafayette, the Emperor's cousin, was the only member of the family who was against the export of cultural treasures abroad. He was impressed that Count Astaroth was buying sculptures from the country's empire. They became friends, so the man would be favorable to the lady. This would be her second chance. 3 days later, the opening day of the Imperial Museum's collection show arrives, and the first thing that comes there is Ariana, preparing for the best outcome. The girl was initially prepared for the perfect meeting. Since the Empress was supposed to be there, she should not be outshone in any way. Since she will be in blue, Gwen was forbidden to use this color. The Imperial Museum's vault contains precious relics that would be difficult to preserve or would be stolen if put on public display. The event is held for experts and journalists from different fields. The Marquise must have added Ariana's name to the guest list, seeing her recent fame. He planned to draw everyone's attention to the importance of forgotten cultural values. Perhaps the reason for the Queen's appearance is that recently, empire sculptures have been appearing on the black market, indicating deals with stolen goods. Apparently, in this way, the imperial family warns that they are keeping an eye on those who are involved in all this. The lady wants to remember this detail. Gwen breaks the lady out of her thoughts. She asks if she would like to go with a companion. Today she will be alone. Uninvited people are not allowed to these events. Instead of Wendy, the lady will be accompanied by the Marquis Lafayette. He is a good man, but he plans to use the Countess to improve his image. A rather calculated move. Initially, the heroine asked the man if he could not accompany the Empress, to which he replied that she would have another escort. It becomes interesting who will come, besides the family. Looking at the note again, the girl thinks that this stranger could be quite an interesting figure, and she will need to get to know him better. Even the Emperor himself might suddenly appear for the sake of advertising. He certainly wouldn't refuse such a thing, especially on purpose. The lady arrived back at the estate. She knows how it will all end, because the conversation with Dylan brought her good results. Further work will only go even better. At the estate, the beauty got ready, the maid helped her, and now she looks at her mistress with a drop of dignity for her wonderful work. The blonde feels a little awkward. Gwen dressed her herself, and now there is no need for admiration, although it must be admitted that the image turned out to be worthy. The girl says goodbye to her assistant and is already heading for the exit, when suddenly a familiar voice is heard behind her. Of course, it is none other than Elena, with whom they have not spoken for quite some time. Smiling, the girl notes that she simply saw the carriage in front of the house and decided to wait. She did not want to stay in her chambers. Instead, she changed her mind and went down. The heroine tries with all her might to seem friendly and nice, but so far she is not doing it very well. Elena simply irritates the lady. Her mere presence is already too much. Ariana is not so naive as to assume that her sister has nothing in mind. She knows that she has some kind of plan, which means she has to find out all the details, every last one. The woman exhales discontentedly. Her gaze is drawn to the clothes from the boutique on Blonde Street. They are beautiful, and even without the tag, it is immediately clear that the Count spent a lot on them, all for his mistress. The heroine does not quite understand her sister's motives. Perhaps she just wants to anger her by showing that Lowen is buying her clothes. The intentions become crystal clear, but the lady does not want to give up so quickly. Whatever the lady does, the lady promises herself that she will definitely not be jealous. She smiles and compliments the clothes, to which Elena blushes and says that the Count bought them. Nodding, the heroine also adds that such an outfit is too beautiful for an ordinary walk in the garden. In such an image, the maiden was obliged to go with her lover, who, it seems, left her completely alone. The brunette clenches her teeth in displeasure. She doesn't want to tolerate this, but she's simply unable to answer the mistress of the house. It's logical that no one in their right mind would go out into the world with a mistress. Ariana nods. I hope that's all. Just don't have time for long, meaningless conversations. Turning around, the lady suggests continuing the walk. There is not a single place where Elena can stand, with her head held high. She will always be dirt under the Countess's feet. The girl gave everything to one man, and now she must regret it. She longs for a luxurious life, which she will most likely never get. It's all very simple. When Astaroth left, her sister gave her an evil look. The lady soon arrived at her destination. She was immediately greeted, incredibly met. The one who shook the entire capital, the Marquise Lafayette, loves to fawn. Remaining as polite as possible, the lady smiles and allows the man to kiss her hand. They haven't seen each other for a long time. That's right, it's been about 5 years since their last meeting. The brunette heard that after what happened at the auction, the lady remained in the shadows. He was grateful that she decided to come. The heroine could not refuse, because their families had maintained friendly relations for a long time. Thanks to the lady, the Marquis will be able to successfully maintain his reputation. He can only rejoice at such a factor, and openly, everyone around notices this unusual couple and begins to shout. The woman did not like that she was noticed before the Empress arrived, because almost immediately she was bombarded with endless questions related to the auction and the statuette. Suddenly, even louder cries break out. Empress Grace Crowdfund finally arrived, and with her the Emperor, Hector Crowdfund. Many remain surprised, because for them this is a surprise. The only one who remains calm is the Marquis. It seems he knew about the visit, and was really looking forward to it. The lady decides to go up with him to greet the honorable couple. When they find themselves next to each other, they both bow their heads, but in response, they only hear that they are not in the palace, and since the emperor is a guest, formalities are definitely not necessary. This is the rule, and it is quite widespread. The blonde looks intently at the countess. The person he is interested in has already arrived, so he cannot help but be happy about such a coincidence of events. His wife gently taps her husband on the shoulder. At first, the young man tells him to behave casually, and then begins to talk about the imperial banquet right in front of the guests. To break the awkward conversation, Ariana apologizes for not coming. As an apology, she can help look at the collection. She is asked how help is possible in such a matter. It turns out that many of the exhibits were donated to the museum by the lady's late father. Some of them are undergoing restoration, but some are openly displayed in the museum for public viewing. It is better to leave the story about the objects to the lady. She is well informed about their origin, and not only, the royal couple persistently asks to become their guide, of course, if it does not bother the beauty. Behind him stands the man who was supposed to be the guide. He is instantly overcome by a great wave of anger. Chief Gloos is a research fellow at the Imperial Museum and does not want to tolerate such treatment. The Marquise did not even ask the young man, but on the contrary, began to vouch for the insight of his guest. The woman is happy to help. Since they speak so of her, she promises to accompany, although it may be that she does not have enough knowledge. The museum's display is the first ever, so it's an even bigger deal than expected. The girl looks around, and the first thing she notices is the grimoire from the Age of Magic. Although the magic that flourished thousands of years ago is now gone, there are artifacts that provide a glimpse into those times that are truly valuable. Ariana has read about them carefully, but seeing them with her own eyes is a completely different matter. The beauty knows that she will definitely cope with the role of a guide, so she will be as good as possible. The girl first points to the book. She presents it to the emperor and then moves on to other things. The empress is amazed by Astaroth's abilities. The event is aimed at raising awareness of the valuable artifacts preserved in the empire. Many people know that the heroine's father dedicated his life to preserving cultural heritage. The lady simply studies hard and continues his work. Such an answer amazed the lady even more. Grace knows that they are obliged to pass on the artifacts to future generations. It is not a choice, but a duty. But some forget about it and sell valuable things on the black market, for which they should be severely punished. Crowdfund smiles calmly. His wife skillfully raised the right topic. He thought that this was just an eccentric family with their own beliefs, but everything is not quite so. In the Astaroth family, there was a talent hidden like Ariana. It can be used for personal purposes and without causing doubt in the origin of desires. The mirror standing on the floor attracts attention. It is different from what the young man saw in the documents. The blonde does not understand where the mirror came from, but it seems strangely familiar. A man appeared behind her. He quietly asked if the lady liked the mirror. The woman almost immediately realized that it seemed the Count was not entirely friendly towards the girl. The beauty is not going to show the fact that she is not entirely comfortable, but instead, she is going to talk about everything and then leave. The mirror is actually quite familiar, the brunette smiles. Of course it is familiar. After all, bronze mirrors are almost everywhere, in every normal estate. The woman understands this, but also understands that this thing is somehow different. The young man interrupts the beauty and begins to tell obvious facts. It is not surprising that the mirror is hidden in the corner of the Imperial Museum. Glus starts screaming. He asks the lady to enlighten everyone, if the heroine already knows how the mirror is different, but she is not entirely sure. The man was robbed of his chance to shine before the Empress. The lady will regret it. Pointing a finger at her, the Count shouts that such things cannot be spoken about without some certainty. The blonde doesn't think that she's talking nonsense. Considering that it's not she who's making a scene, the lady isn't going to stand aside when she's being publicly slandered. She's talking about bronze mirrors. The heroine has already reached the description of the front side of the mirror when she is interrupted. The Count shouts that they were used not only in everyday life, but also in rituals. Usually in such cases, simple phrases praising the gods are engraved, but she had never seen the inscription on this mirror. The lady thinks again and again that this is very strange. She sees a mirror for the first time, but it seems especially familiar. The inscription engraved on the front side with a broken part reminds of something. It seems as if something similar has already been encountered. The brunette presses the lady. If she wants to prove that this is not an ordinary bronze mirror, then she is obliged to provide evidence. Simply talking nonsense will not work. Something came into the girl's head. She became happy and immediately ordered to turn off the light. Lafayette says that it is not difficult for him, but does not quite understand what the meaning is. The man doubts, because if something happens in the presence of His Majesty, he will have to take responsibility. The lady looks confident. If everything works out, then the gentleman will have a very valuable artifact. The Lord will not lose anything in any case, because if something goes wrong, only Ariana will be disgraced, only advantages, and they even give time to think about it. Suddenly, the Empress comes forward. She smiles and promises that she will take full responsibility. She looks confident, because she decides to trust the Countess. The hero still has some doubts, but he can't refuse such an honorable person, so he has to go to the switch, and after a few minutes, it becomes dark in the main hall. The woman asks to give her a lamp. The Count standing behind is thinking about what the lady is trying to achieve. She does not tell her idea. She just waits for everyone to see what result she will get. The blonde is most likely putting on a show out of shame. There can be no other options. Suddenly something happens. People around start whispering and asking what will happen now. The beauty smiles. She presents something interesting to the attention. The light illuminates the hall, and it is difficult to find words further. Now the Count is in shock. He doesn't believe what's happening. It's too much. He didn't expect the girl to be so smart. The portrait of the first emperor is depicted right on the ceiling, which makes the ruler more surprised than anyone else. His eyes sparkle with joy. Finally, it is time to tell the story of the mirror in all its details. In front of them is the Tuguangyong, also known as the reflective or magic mirror. It is truly rare. The Countess was at first confused because she did not understand what kind of thing it was. But then she remembered, because one day she and her father met a merchant from a neighboring continent. He showed the mirror, calling it the greatest treasure. As far as the girl knows, this is the first time that a Tuguangyong made in the empire has been found. This technology originally belonged to another continent, making it the only such artifact in the empire. Anything is possible. The Countess is also not sure, since even the best experts in the empire did not recognize it. Such a valuable artifact was discovered on the day of His Majesty's visit. It is obvious that this is the great blessing of the first ruler. By spreading the good news, Tuguangyong's discovery will be explained, and Ariana Astaroth's contribution cannot be ignored. This is the best-case scenario. Since the man has nothing to lose anyway, he doesn't think long about what to do next. He notices that the lady is behaving insolently. Turning around, the beauty looks intently at the brunette, who stands in horror. She asks if he finally understood how the bronze mirror differs from others. Exactly the same. Now the young man knows that he shouldn't have stuck his neck out and started an argument. He only lost, and on top of that, he disgraced himself. The lady is not only beautiful, but also smart, and it shows. Ariana returned back to her workplace. In the evening newspapers, with mentions of the lady appeared everywhere. Dylan asks how the lady managed to do this. She brushes it off, stating that it was luck. The woman decides to change the course of the conversation. There is something more important now. She needs to look at the result of Wright's work. The young man immediately nods and holds out a plate. At first glance, it seems that not everything is so bad. The assistant restored the relic using a golden hue. As requested, due to the high cost of gold dust, his hands were shaking all the time while working, but everything ended successfully. Astaroth examines the thing again. Her emotions are impossible to read, so when she starts talking, the interlocutor freezes in horror, anticipating the worst development of events. A second later, Ariana exclaims with admiration and says that this will make a wonderful product. One can only praise this. The work was done skillfully by a professional in his field. The Countess, by the way, will have a plan. To start with, it is worth selling plates in small quantities. Dylan does not understand, believing that it will be much more profitable to sell more of them, even if the price is high. In the end, it is just dishes. The lady suggests dividing the relics into classes. It looks like an exact copy. People will be happy just putting a copy in the living room. In any case, there are really few dishes with history. There will definitely be those for whom fashion will be more important than history. It is just a shell that is passed from hand to hand. Fashion is made specifically to profit from it. Now it's Ariana's turn. She asks to take the sample that Dylan made and brought to the workplace. The blonde goes to the table to get some paper. She needs to protect the plate from some damage. The lady finds something there and immediately runs, shouting and calling Wendy. The Countess throws a whole stack of papers at the young man, where some fables are written about Baron Sear. One article says that the man kidnaps innocent girls. Blue-eyed, obviously hasn't read the news yet, and now runs his eyes over the lines in surprise. He learns a lot of interesting information about himself. It turns out that he seduces girls with his face, and then abandons them to their fate. The Countess thought that what was written was quite possible, but she was not sure until the very end. The first part was so accurate, in which it was written about a beautiful face. It is difficult to find a face like the Marquise's anywhere else. He has special facial features that immediately attract the attention of others, especially since a detailed description of his appearance was found in the newspaper. The man grins, asking if the girl is talking about herself. She also has a beautiful appearance. It is impossible to argue with this. Hearing this, she asks herself to remain calm. Brushing it off, the Countess prefers to return to a more important topic of conversation. They are somehow unlucky. The maiden wants to finally be told all the details of the truth. The interlocutor does not want to continue the meaningless conversation. He keeps trying to get away from it, but he is unable to do so due to his persistence. The Countess is worried about their operation. Their lie about Wendy should not have been revealed under any circumstances. She asks to take a closer look at the text. It is impossible that they were talking about another person. The brunette speaks confidently, and when he once again asks to check everything, he hears an even more rude refusal. The woman truly does not understand why such news was published, if it is all untrue. Few people in the Empire have heard the name of the prince, written more like a third-rate novel than an article. Baron Sear actually introduced himself as Wendy on paper. It is in his interests to find the one who wrote all this. The blue-eyed one does not want to become a black widower. As much as it was undesirable, the story quickly spread in social circles, and many heard that the man seduced even married women without hesitation. Kaizen, who was reading the news, couldn't stop laughing. If the Duke found out about something like this, he would be completely overcome. Considering that this was all nonsense, Sear wasn't even his real name, but a simple title in the Crocell Empire. The gentleman irritably orders them to stop laughing and instead report the results. They should summarize the results of the investigation. The time has come. Wiping away the tears that accidentally appeared in his eyes, the hero becomes more serious. He has learned something, but is not entirely sure of its origin, because the action is considered unusual. A stranger with a blue bag often comes to the workshop. This is not a servant or even cameo, although he could be on the list of candidates. since he is the manager of the Count's assets, as well as the brains of the criminal organization Demon Cola. The fact that the red-haired man works as an asset manager in the House of Astaroth means one of two things. Either he washed his hands of the crimes, or the Count has teamed up with him. Kaizen asks Wendy if he saw the boy's face clearly, even though he is a stranger. But it seems that everything was obvious anyway. They have a lot to learn to put the puzzle together. Even if there were unknown members, there is nothing strange about it. They can continue with the investigation. But even so, it will most likely not bear fruit. It will be difficult to find that person. The assistant does not understand why, and asks again if it was really possible to see the face. It was more like some kind of absurdity. That's exactly it. The fact that the person entering the vault did not even bother about privacy and did not hide his face means that he is confident that he will not be found. It is always safer to hide from prying eyes. A crazy thought strikes Kaizen's head. All this could also mean that he didn't learn anything and wasted so much time. The gentleman asks about the bag. There are different shades of blue. The most logical thing would be to track what Cameo was bringing with him. This idea appealed to both of them, so it was soon decided to follow it. There is silence in the estate. The days go by as usual, and it seems there are no more provocative moments. Florian and his mother sort through the letters. Madame is happy that finally all the rumors have died down. Now they can return to the banquet, where they will look for a husband for Green Jr. The blonde is still angry at Ariana. She didn't deign to send them invitations. Lowen, fortunately, took care of everything and offered to write down his wife's name, just like that, without asking her opinion. A woman rarely thinks that she has raised a worthy son. But this day is just like that. Flory points his finger at everyone he wants to see at the banquet, and the mother promises to send them all invitations. The maid stood outside the door while the two talked about everything, and as soon as everything was over, one of them came to tell the mistress everything. She asks, "What should we do?" Astaroth takes a few seconds to think. For starters, it would be a good idea to remove the invitations before they are sent home. They will be personally rewritten. The head maid, not quite understanding the motive, is forced to ask again. But Ariana is calm. I cannot trust their ability to write. It is impossible for them to send out something so dishonest in my name. The brunette thought that the lady would refuse the idea of a banquet, but it seems that she really will do everything, only herself. While everyone is busy, the lady will have time for her own affairs. Her guest will also be there. A rich man from the Republic of Linnet, who is interested in the culture of the Empire, will become the next victim of the aristocrat's desires. She wants to invite him to a banquet, and not just like that. Until that moment, the lady was wondering how to invite a person without attracting too much attention from the rotten and greedy mother and daughter. She was lucky. There could be no better opportunity than a banquet. It can be used to the full, and the Countess is happy that now things will go well for her. It's night outside. Everyone has probably already gone to bed, except for Elena, of course. She's sitting on the bed, frantically biting her nails and thinking about everything that's happening in her life. My thoughts keep returning to my sister. They even took her husband away from her. But for some reason, the lady looks like she is still okay. Like it doesn't affect her at all. A realization comes to mind, or rather, untrue thoughts. Ariana is probably just pretending that she doesn't care. But in this way, she experiences what happened to her in a difficult form. In the end, the Count is on Elena's side, not his wife's, and even plans to throw a banquet in honor of the one who is carrying the child, which makes his heart warmer. The woman is about to go to bed, carefully adjusting her pillow before doing so, but then she hears some rustling outside the window. Then someone throws a small stone at the glass. She has to get up. She really doesn't want to do this. There is simply no way out. The beauty looks out the window and sees Barra standing near the estate. They haven't seen each other for a long time. Pulling up her dress, Elena quickly goes down the stairs. In a second, she finds herself on the street, and when someone addresses her, she hisses, asking to be a little quieter. The young man was obviously completely crazy to come to the Count at such a time. He shrugged his shoulders. If he had shown up during the day, it would have been even more noticeable, and questions would have started. The maid exhales with displeasure. She can't just force the hero to leave her alone, but she can talk. She reminds that they shouldn't see each other for some time. The man seemed to have forgotten her words. The brunette remembers that it is better to refrain from meetings. This time, the reason is really important. It is connected with Mrs. Ariana and what happened not so long ago. Hearing her sister's name, the beauty squinted with displeasure. She thought that she would no longer have to be surprised by anything. She thought that she had dealt with the Countess. In the morning, the heroine gets up earlier than usual. The reason for this is the noise she heard from behind the door. It remained for several minutes and caused direct discontent. Stretching, the lady went out into the corridor where she met her maids. She immediately asks the question, "What happened, and why are you all gathered here?" The Countess was going to get up early anyway, but now she is tormented by curiosity. The blue-eyed girl shrugs her shoulders. Since everything is fine with the girl, the mission is accomplished, nothing else is important. Since there was no escape from the mistress's wishes, the maid told the story. Elena came in the morning and looked as if she had gone crazy, as if she was not very well. The details are even more out of the ordinary. The girl brought pumpkin soup with her and said that she needed to see her sister because the soup reminded her of how they ate it together as children. The nanny prepared this dish when the girl had no appetite. She will never forget this. Gwen has no idea what the woman is up to, but she is not going to let her into the mistress's chambers. The Countess, without thinking twice, asks to let her sister in. The brunette rushes to her and asks how this is possible. Last time she attacked Ariana when she was about to leave and wanted to humiliate her. The maid seemed to have forgotten how the mistress had humiliated Elena back then. She was trying to do something, but the lady was definitely not going to give in to someone like her, the brunette agreed. The woman wasn't even worth her attention, which meant there was nothing to worry about. Gwen promises that she will be there for the girl, even if she trusts her completely. She cannot take her eyes off the heroine. Letting go of the maid, the mistress asks her sister to come in. She expects what will happen next. Entering inside, the lady smiles a pleasant smile, although it is immediately obvious that something is hidden behind it. She carries pumpkin soup on a plate, just like the one we used to make in childhood. The woman says that she has no appetite. It reminds her of childhood. Then she also almost never had an appetite, and therefore soup always helped. You have to ask what the maid needs. She just remembered the old days. In fact, she remembers her mother. Elena must understand for herself that everything was ruined only because of her. Ariana asks to stop wasting her time and instead leave her chambers. Rushing forward, the girl asks Gwen to leave. Only they can know what will be said. The lady almost immediately refuses, which is logical. Without giving up her attempts, the sister notes that what is being told will concern the Countess. It is not very good if the assistant finds out something that could interfere with her attitude towards the mistress. The girl freezes in shock. She begins to realize that the conversation will not end so easily. The lady will have to try. Gwen wants to refuse and stay close, but she is refused. The blonde smiles confidently and says, "Everything is fine. I will succeed." When the door opens, the girl smiles. She knows for sure that now she will make Ariana confess to everything that happened a few days ago. Silence hangs in the room. The two look at each other. Astaroth does not quite understand why the woman is delaying the moment of their direct conversation. The blonde adjusts the chair and calmly turns to her sister. She asks her to answer quickly. She doesn't have much time. She has other things to do during the day. The voice sounds menacing. The heroine asks about some man. It's as if she can't overcome her anger. She wants to attack Ariana. The brunette heard that the beauty was pregnant and now wants to know who the father of the child is. In response, the friend chuckles. "I don't know who told you about this, but isn't this a strange question?" The beauty smiles. If the Countess is pregnant, it is quite logical who is the father of the baby. Astaroth could not cheat on the one she loves. "Elena really acts like she's crazy," she screams, noting that Lowen has mentioned more than once that they haven't had anything lately. Even though they sleep in the same bed, the couple has nothing. I want to laugh. Everything said is probably a lie. The Count cannot be trusted. Usually, when a man and a woman sleep in the same bed, something twists between them. With every word, Elena steps back. She cannot believe what is happening. The Count has only one child and he is inside her. Someone is definitely deceiving him. The woman screams that she will defend her truth to the last, and then, blushing, she runs out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Left alone, the blonde smiles. Such an outcome could not but please her. From the very morning, this interaction makes her feel that the day will go well. The girl recalls that during a conversation with the doctor, she made a decision on how to conduct Elena. Initially, they were going to check Baraz. The beauty was thinking about the best option, and the man would not even know that someone was trying to find out more information about him. The doctor listened carefully to the lady's wishes. She asked to tell Baraz about the false pregnancy. He would not care, since he has nothing against Astaroth's relationship, but not Elena. The plan seemed ideal to the beauty. She knew that if the young man united with Elena, he would tell her about Ariana's pregnancy. The lady did not think that she would ask about it so openly. That day, the healer noted that if he did this, Baraz would have problems. However, it was he who betrayed the trust and passed on the information. Astaroth is happy that everything worked out. Elena walks down the corridor. She is still angry. She will never allow the Count to be deceived. She will do everything to keep him by her side and to distance him from his wife. It turned out that the Count had already woken up. Oddly enough, on this day, he decided not to sleep for half a day. Almost immediately, the young man asks where the girl went. Elena does not dare to reveal her adventures. She decides to put them off. So first, she tells how she wanted pumpkin soup, so she went to the kitchen. The beauty was asked why there was nothing in her hands. It seems she forgot the soup in the kitchen. The girl sadly lowers her head. Does pregnancy really make me forgetful? The brunette reaches out to the Count to hug him, and the man asks if the heroine is very tired. It seems to her that she has begun to get tired much faster. Looking around, the guy notices that perhaps there is too much stress. They don't need more. The lady said that she wants to arrange a banquet at the estate, but it seems it will be difficult. The young man is worried about his mother. She will be busy planning, and perhaps the mistress will be able to join her. It will be tiring, but still incredibly important. Elena interrupts her future husband. She assures him that everything will be fine with her. She is really much more tired. But still the desire to help is much stronger. The woman leans gently against the young man and hugs him. Preparing the banquet is the role of the hostess of the house. As the heroine thought, the Count considers her his mistress. The blonde asks not to overdo it, just to help a little. Mother will take on most of the responsibility. It will be better for everyone. Elena decides to look around. She notices that on the table lies the history of Baron Sear. He is a libertine who bewitches women. Ariana must be upset, because rumors are going around that her lover was so nasty, she should probably be crying. It turned out that Flora saw those two together, for Countess Astaroth is too frivolous. She should not rule the estate. She still can't change anything. The young man asks if he can tell something funny. It was he who spread the rumor. It was necessary to give the newspapers news that would cover what happened at the banquet in the Imperial Palace. The beauty nods. She can't add anything else, because she understands that just one wrong word or movement can ruin everything. The Baron is indeed Ariana's lover, but in that case the girl is pregnant by him and is simply trying to hide everything. The whole truth needs to be found out. The social season is always considered to be eventful. This time it is no exception. Events are held one after another, not giving the aristocrats a rest. His Majesty personally invited the Countess to a polo game. The lady is not interested in this sport, but fortunately, there was no reason to refuse. The woman watches the game closely, still trying to understand at least a little. She is surprised to realize that Sierre is on the field, and also as a striker. Polo is a sport for aristocrats. An ordinary person would not even be able to touch a stick. No one is allowed where they do not belong. The Count sitting next to her asks the beauty if she knows anyone from the team of players. Without thinking twice, the blonde says about player number 1. The brunette makes a quick analysis in a few seconds. Since he is wearing a white uniform, he is from the Emperor's team. They are sponsored personally by the ruler. Player number 1 must be the nephew, Alex Black. He was brought in because the striker was injured. The detective agency must have asked him to come on the field. The Countess still has doubts. She is not an expert, so she does not know about other games. But with Pod, the conversation is short. The story is too complicated. The woman could not imagine that Wendy was a real aristocrat. He always showed himself as a simple guy. Her thoughts were too confused. The beauty was unable to look away in time and accidentally collided with the object of her observation. The young man plays quite well. When the ball flies forward, he almost immediately rushes forward to skillfully hit it back. and show a master class. It is a pleasure to watch the game, as Wendy repeatedly outshines all her opponents and takes the leading positions for herself and her team. Even a person as far removed from sports as the Countess does not want to leave the stands. Apparently, she is not the only one who finds what is happening exciting. The brunette scores another goal, as if he had set himself the goal of scoring all the goals, taking the opportunity away from all the other players. The two people from the other team look at each other. They begin to understand that they will have to resort to dirty methods, which they will use. The young man gallops forward calmly, but then another horse catches up with him, and a second later they collide, causing him to almost fall to the ground. Wendy tries to calm her horse down, but it's as if he's gone crazy. The horse is scared, and so screams are heard throughout the stands. Ariana jumps to her feet involuntarily and screams in alarm. Wendy is in danger of falling and breaking her beautiful face. The woman cannot stand it. Finally, after a few moments, everything around becomes calmer. The rider makes sure that the animal stops worrying so much. Everyone around starts clapping. All the applause belongs to just one character who pulled off an amazing trick. Polo is considered an intense game. Astaroth sits down in her seat. She feels tired, as if she pulled the trick herself. Wendy is crazy. Soon the game ends. The team gathers near the stadium, where they are met by the Emperor, who, oddly enough, watched everything that was happening with particular zeal. The celebration part begins. The gentleman remarks that this game was great, which means drinking champagne would be just right. Ariana wandered into the backyard of the building because she was trying to find Wendy. She opened the door and entered the men's locker room. But the object of her desires did not appear. Just as she was about to leave, the lady accidentally hit her face right into the young man's chest. He asked in surprise why she ended up in such an unexpected place. The blonde coughs awkwardly, trying to justify herself. Nothing provocative when almost everyone in the room is dressed. No, the blue-eyed man doesn't seem to share her opinion. The press and beautiful collarbones of a young man cannot make a lady feel the past. She has been married for 5 years and is not at the age to blush like this. Better dress and continue the conversation. The small interaction left the hero disappointed. Pulling on his shirt, he complains, I have a very special body. To get as much involvement as possible, Wendy suggests going outside, where no one will be able to hear their conversation. First of all, the guy asks why the beauty is not at the banquet. She saw him on the field. That's why she was there. She is surprised to learn that in front of her is a nobleman, and not just a detective. The gentleman remained just as surprised. If he had known that the Countess would come, perhaps he would not have joined the game. He did not want to be exposed, although he had been honest from the very beginning. The man's name is Lowen. He holds the title of Baron Sierre. All this is pure truth. The young man is not a detective, but he fulfills the Countess's request. Then he simply could not refuse. The hero will not refuse the commission. He promises that he will definitely conduct a thorough investigation of Astaroth, only to help as much as possible. Ariana is surprised that they are even having such a conversation. She is apparently considered so heartless, according to the man's observations. She really does not show herself as a good-natured person. Such statements make the girl want to scream. She is about to hit her interlocutor, but at the last moment, she realizes that it is better to save her fists. The brunette grins. The heroine is really heartless, because only she could think of hitting the wounded. The facial expression changes. You are wounded. Where? The hero shrugs. His wound is not considered anything special, just a scratch, because of which he doesn't even want to bother the doctors. The woman takes the situation much more seriously than she would like. She does not want their conversation to be the last one. She still needs help. The most common phrase of men who later died is that everything is fine with them. Even small wounds can become infected, so you should always be extremely careful. Taking out some kind of bandage, the lady puts it on her hand. It is worth at least protecting the wounds from germs. But even so, it is necessary to go to the doctor. The hero hides his hand behind his back and squeezes it hard. He quietly thanks the aristocrat. He has never been treated with such kindness. Only then does the Countess realize that she seems to have been delayed a little. She still has to see His Majesty. They still haven't spoken. Ariana can't help but say that the game was truly impressive. Polo is something that will now become one of her hobbies. Watching the retreating figure, the blue-eyed man is unable to hold back his smile. After all, people do not change. They remain the same. The woman reflects on what happened. Too much new information has come in just one day. It is strange to realize that the Baron runs a private detective agency. Astaroth sees only one logical conclusion. It's all about money. Otherwise, the man wouldn't even start working, especially in such a job. A voice distracts him from his thoughts. The door swings open, the married couple greets the beauty, and finally they get to talk. Immediately bowing down, the girl says greetings in response. She is incredibly pleased to meet, and the question immediately arises, "Did you like the game?" Astaroth sincerely thanks for the invitation. She had a good time, and next time she would like to participate too. The Emperor is taking a wrong turn with the topic of conversation. He heard that hard times have come for the lady. Before it was a little easier for her to exist. The man is trying to find out if she really has problems with the Count. He thought that if he finds out the whole truth, he can help. The Countess turns away with displeasure. The picture begins to come together. It was precisely because of this conversation that the invitation was sent earlier. Unfortunately, the help of the powerful always has its price. If a lady asks for help, the gentleman will probably ask for a favor in return. A deal that is not bad in theory, but still. The beauty smiles, thanking you for the offer, Your Majesty, but I would prefer to figure it out on my own. That would be better, wouldn't it? The crowdfunder blinks his eyes in surprise. This is not at all the answer he expected to hear. The interlocutor refuses without even hearing the full proposal. Only the past comes to mind, but the girl had already tried to solve her problem by asking a friend for help, and the idea seemed great back then. The situation should have resolved itself peacefully, without complications, but everything turned into a disaster. Ariana was not even given a chance to save herself. The Countess realized that trusting someone else's power would only bring temporary peace, and she was not happy with this turn of events. After everything that happened to her, the girl decides that she will now consider her issues on her own. Hector says that he has no answer to such a statement. Ariana was sent to enjoy the banquet. There was no more point in talking. The man was watching her from the side. If he knew what was hidden in her soul, he would have introduced her to the prince long ago. In any case, it was encouraging to know that not all was lost, and that the emperor still had every chance to fulfill his plans. A few days later, the statuette was ready. The restoration was completed just within the time frame set by the lady, although it was not entirely simple. Astaroth thanks Dylan for the work he did. Many would like to take on such a task for free. And Wright even got paid for it. Isn't that happiness? The young man is too modest. The girl recommends that he try to get out of his comfort zone. It is better to confidently talk about the technique and the process. The green-eyed man agrees, and only a few seconds later realizes that he will apparently be performing at the exhibition, which amazes him. The lady shrugs. She warned that she would make him the star of the restoration, which means the promise will soon be fulfilled. The hero turns away, blushing, and clears his throat. He changes the subject. During his time working in the workshop, he had become very close to Lowen and Kaizen. The lady understands that this is normal practice, but is not sure about Wendy. He is usually very difficult to approach, although Dylan thinks he is quite nice. Footsteps were heard behind her before the beauty could react. She was asked why the Baron couldn't be nice. The blue-eyed man shouted loudly that he was getting up and was now telling that the lady simply did not hear him. A tense atmosphere hung in the room. There is no point in continuing the conversation. The hero puts a box into the beauty's hands. There is a handkerchief in it. The girl understands everything. Is this the one I bandaged the wound with? It turns out that the blood was so ingrained that it couldn't be washed off. The man, like a gentleman, bought a new handkerchief. It looks incredibly beautiful. After examining the item, the blonde realizes that it is branded, which surprises her. The guy has no money, and he works in a detective agency. The woman tries to brush off the gift. She didn't value that scarf that much, and it's not necessary to reimburse it. It seems that there is a bribe in hand. There will be a secular evening in Astaroth. The Baron needs to be invited to it. It is easy to arrange. Invitations are sent on behalf of the hostess, but she will not be at the party. Initially, the event was organized in order to find a suitable groom for Flory. The Countess refused to help almost immediately. She was simply not interested. The lady sees no problem in getting involved in other people's relationships, and she certainly doesn't want to become part of an organization. Blue-eyed, digesting all the information in his head, begins to suspect that not everything is so simple. He asks a question about invitations. From the outside, it may seem that things will get worse, but then the lady convinces that everything is under control, and the Countess is interested in why Cyr should go to the party. He is not claiming the place of Flori's fiancé. Preparations are in full swing. Elena watches the decorations develop and does not believe that the ball that she organized will soon take place. Madame cleverly avoided the organization. She first tried to do something, quickly getting tired. But this is even for the best. The brunette constantly reminded herself that preparing evenings in the Count's house was the responsibility of the hostess, which meant that she would soon be a countess. The maid reported that the Count was downstairs. Astaroth immediately ran to him, anticipating how he would praise her for the work she had done. The woman smiles, but then hears the words that they are cutting right where it hurts. He thinks that mother has no taste. She thinks that collecting a bunch of shiny things means doing the job. Words like these make you want to run away. It was Green who said that for beauty, you need to decorate everything with maximum brilliance. Elena decides to talk anyway. She calls the Count and asks how he likes this hall. She, as usual, looks incredibly beautiful. The gentleman notices that, looking at the face of his beloved, he immediately came to life after the sight of the dull room. He does not suspect that he is touching Astaroth. Giving the initiative to the mother was not worth it. Now the hero will be dissatisfied. He regrets that he did not leave everything to Elena. She would have definitely tried. The heroine tries to convince him not to say anything, because otherwise the mother will be upset. But she also needs to find out about the girl's feelings. A lot of time has been spent, and there is no result. In beautiful speeches, the maiden could perhaps be the best. She whines. Well, she tried. It will be unpleasant for her to hear such an assessment. She feels so sorry for her that it becomes sad. The blonde agrees not to tell Madame anything, and if anyone asks, they will say that the maids decorated the hall instead of Ariana, who refused. Finally, the hour has come. The guests will soon arrive. Green keeps chirping about how she has been preparing for this moment for an incredibly long time. It is clear that all the preparations were entrusted to Elena. She is a very submissive girl, which is great, because politeness is definitely appreciated. New guests have arrived. These are not simple aristocrats, but the Duke and Duchess Eitzel. Their family is remarkable for many reasons. The Countess knows that they have a son who is long overdue for marriage. She hoped that the couple would come, and her hopes were justified. While the lady was thinking about how to greet her, these two calmly passed by. They did not even pay attention to the woman. They look around the room. The party itself is below normal. At this rate, Ariana's reputation is at risk of suffering. The Green family watches as the Duke and Duchess greet other families instead of returning to the hosts. The ducal house of Eitzel was one of the aristocratic families closely associated with Ariana, which is not surprising, as it had been this way since ancient times. The Duchess was Astaroth's godmother. She was close to the baby's parents, so she agreed to this fate. The heirs of the family were childhood friends, which meant that this brought the two families even closer together. No one could separate them any further. Green, of course, didn't know all the details, so now they are doubly worried. The Count is sent as soon as possible to find out what is happening. The blonde also wants to know what is going on, but in high society, you cannot be the first to address a person of higher status. The young man tries to find Flori a worthy groom, but in the hall, almost everyone is higher in title. The ball becomes similar to the one organized by Eitzel. They accept all the guests. Ariana stands on the street thinking. She thinks that her husband is having fun at a party and does not suspect that he is having a hard time. Everything is going according to plan. Instead of invitations written on behalf of the lady, the girl created her own and sent them out to the guests. In the invitations, the Countess announced that she would be unable to attend and that the Duke and Duchess would be hosts in her place. Fortunately, they happily accepted. Now the girl hoped that her family would understand what it was like to be a ghost guarding the ballroom. Lowen would surely regret all his mistakes. Ariana's first clients arrived. A wealthy married couple from the Republic. They had a business meeting scheduled, but the girl immediately began to shower them with compliments about the mansion. The mansion preserves the history of the empire. All business discussions will take place there. the woman prepared the perfect palace dinner. Having climbed to the second floor, the trio found themselves in a hall on a table where various dishes were already laid out. During the meal, you shouldn't talk about goods. The lady already understood that if the seller nervously persuades you to buy something, the goods will depreciate in value and the desire to buy will disappear. One of the maids had already managed to bring dessert. Of course, this was not all for nothing. Ariana thought out even this part of the evening perfectly. The brunette noticed not the dessert, but the plate on which it was served. The thing seemed extremely beautiful to her, even unique. The perfect moment came just in time. Ariana says that the plate is at least several hundred years old. It was a shame not to throw it away, even though it was broken, so it was restored. The beauty does not understand why they did it so noticeably. Usually in such cases, the master hides the traces of restoration. The Astaroth clan has always attached great importance to the past. Even broken ones are part of history, so it was decided not to hide anything. The fact that all the cracks are visible is something unique. The broken is in no way inferior in attractiveness to the whole. The guest's husband agrees that the item looks great, and in fact, this dish is valuable for another reason. After a pause, the beauty explains that the same master who restored the famous statuette worked on it. Soon, the national treasure would be shown in the Imperial Museum. The brunette was just about to visit the exhibition, since she had already arrived in the Empire and did not expect to see the work of a restorer in the estate. The Countess had long understood the whole truth. People most often desire what they do not have. Their pockets are full of money, so they want to get something special. Several factors are concentrated in the plate. The story is in the imperfection. In essence, the sale of history is in the plates. The Countess asks if the customers like the plates. Of course, they want to buy such dishes immediately, but it is unlikely that they will be easy to find. Playing by her own principle, the woman offers to help with the search. Since the guests are so interested, she will not mind intervening. Of course, it won't be easy, because wholesale purchases are impossible, but the lady will try to find a few pieces for regular customers. The couple would like to see as many copies as possible found, price is no object, and the lady promises to do her best. Seer is on his way to the event. He has already managed to read the invitation, which clearly stated that the role of the organizer would be taken on by the Duke and Duchess couple. Officially, Wendy has arrived at the party, but the unspoken motive is completely different. In the chaos of the party, while everyone is having fun, he will sneak into the Count and Cameo's offices to find the accounting books. On such a day, the security will be much less careful. Even if they notice the man, they will simply be surprised to recognize him as the hero that the press writes about. The Duke's family is sitting elsewhere. They are all upset. Because this whole story is too shameful, not a single person has approached them the whole evening. Finally, an invitation fell into Green's hands, and he realized what the problem was. Ariana had dared to hand over authority to Eitzel. Flori starts to get hysterical. They promised to find her a groom, but now her brother can't even say a word. The heroine feels much more shame than when she was sitting in the imperial family. Unable to bear it, the young man slaps his sister. It's hard enough for him, he needs to find Astaroth. The Baron finally drove up to the estate. His carriage catches the eye, because the servants see something like this for the first time. Of course they are interested. The man comes out and is immediately recognized. He is the mistress's lover, rumors about whom are circulating throughout the house. The butler does not understand the intricacies of aristocratic relationships, but is happy that the lady is at least not alone. He is going to take the Baron out without even checking the invitation, because he wants to help the secret meeting take place. Blue-Eyed soon realizes that he is not being led to the main hall at all, but somewhere into the outbuilding, as if he could find something there. The brunette can't trust anyone around him. He doubts that maybe Cameo has placed his people there in advance. The Duke has no doubt that if something goes wrong, he will simply kill the guy and leave. They led him to some door and offered to go in. Wendy didn't understand why the servant looked at him like that, but he still thought that he and his mistress were having a secret meeting and was beaming with joy that he was able to help. The door opened. Ariana stood on the threshold, asking what the man had forgotten right next to her chambers. As it turned out, the young man himself had no idea what had happened. He had been brought there by a servant, who simply followed him. The hero almost immediately lays out something like a plan on the table. He asks about the Count's office and Camayo. The blonde nods, but she doesn't quite understand why the detective needed the exact location of the rooms that no one is allowed to enter. There is a smile on his face. He needs an account book. If you think about it, the hero came to rob the Countess's house. Snorting, the beauty walks away. It is not recommended to admit this to the mistress, but it seems he does not care. On the map, the girl sees secret passages and rooms marked, as if a real thief is standing in front of her. She is taking away confidential information about her house. In fact, the young man has already imprinted everything in his head. The easiest thing is not to even argue. Ariana sends the guy off to do her business. The Countess smiles to herself. The owner of the house telling the thief to go away sounds funny, but nothing can be done. That's the dynamic she and Wendy have. Not allowing the girl to leave so easily, the Baron asks why she looks so tired, as if she had not slept enough. The blonde studies her interlocutor from head to toe. She is used to seeing him in casual clothes, but this outfit looks special. Unlike him, the Countess is in her sleepwear and without makeup. She blushes and asks whether it was necessary to ask about this. Wendy asks if the lady is blushing because of him. She becomes defensive, noting that she didn't even expect to see him. The face should be used with caution. It is dangerous. A grin is heard. The girl is no better either. She is apparently going to sleep in this building because there is a party in the main building. The girl is going to rest, and Wendy will go look for something to steal. Unlike Cameo, it is quite easy to get into the Count's office. The assistant's door is always locked with a special key. The man himself did not tell about it. He just got the heroine with his nagging, that one day she decided to check the accounting books. The lady wanted to search the office, although she wouldn't call it that. She just doesn't want to discuss it anymore. The beauty literally pushes the guy out the door. But before that, he changes his expression to a serious one and tries to explain something. The voice changes abruptly. The hero meant something more important and more real. But it is better not to get involved with Cameo and not to do any business with him. It will not end well. This will be unrealistic. The girl manages her husband's property. Besides, they have already quarreled many times, not wanting to listen to anything. The Baron again asks to be more careful. The blonde has no choice anyway. She can only exhale with displeasure and then agree with what she is told. She will try not to talk to Cameo. Smiling, the hero gently strokes the beauty's head, as if he had forgotten about any rules or did it as a joke. Regardless, it reminded me of those rare moments when Ariana's father was still alive and constantly praised her for any achievements. Lying in bed, the heroine realizes that for some reason she cannot fall asleep. She ponders what the situation they found themselves in meant. After half an hour, Ariana was finally able to fall asleep. But unfortunately, this did not last long. The man pulled the girl out from under the blanket, screaming. The Count really shows his anger. Not just like that. He does not understand how his wife could do this to him, and how she could come up with something so stupid. The girl could no longer deny it. She was ordered to answer. She defended herself. Since she could not attend the evening, it was quite logical that someone had to replace the lady. In the end, there was no point in acting, since Ariana would only make a laughingstock of herself, and she would not show up. The man continues to rage. The girl touched him and his family. He already raises his hand to hit again, but manages to come to his senses in time. Stepping back, the hero exhales several times, trying to set his path. He begins to say something about a marriage contract, the same old song. Astaroth could very well end up in prison because she made a pact while hiding her infertility, something the Count could not have expected in the first place. The blonde, he says, is being generous, and he is irritated by the fact that the lady is behaving like this. She replies, "And have you checked the information about my infertility? How many times have I said that this is not true?" As a result, the lady will repeat the same thing until the very end, because no direct evidence of deception will be found when concluding the contract. To begin with, it would be nice to know who told about the health problems. If it was Elena, this is at least proof that the husband believes her and not his wife. Of course, the marriage was not concluded out of great love, but all this time they were one whole. All this time Lowen believed Ariana. His patience is exhausted. There is nothing to say to such accusations. If the young man really believed, they would have talked as soon as the possibility of infertility became clear. As a result, they distanced themselves from each other. The relationship is already ruined. Elena is also lying. But for some reason, the young man trusts her, believing that everything is fine with her. Obviously, this is because she is carrying his child under her heart. The man shuts Ariana up and accuses her of trying to turn him against his future wife. He just wants the heroine to save face and behave like an aristocrat. The door closed. The girl was left alone with her thoughts, but she was not sad. If her husband had behaved like an aristocrat, he would have cut out his wife's tongue long ago so that she would no longer talk nonsense. The brunette is standing near the office. He is obviously bored, easy penetration, and little benefit. He even wanted to go back to his home, but the work needs to be finished. In the first minutes, one thing became clear. The Count dumped all the work on Cameo, while he himself was having fun. He didn't care about the duchy and about how things would go in the future, because his assistant handled everything perfectly. All the valuable materials should be in Cameo's office. The door does not open in the usual ways. It seems to lock automatically. This complicates the task. The Baron is thinking about how exactly he will be able to get inside. Suddenly he hears footsteps. It seems like someone is coming, but it is not immediately clear who exactly. Having managed to hide behind one of the figures in the corridor, Wendy soon sees that it is the owner of the office himself, who, as usual, looks completely calm and doesn't care about anything at all. Initially, there was no plan, but now the young man is thinking about how he can slip in while the door is open. Unfortunately, the red-haired man is too vigilant and will soon notice everything. The Baron has no shortage of persistence. All he can do is wait until he can go out. For now, he will stand quietly, and perhaps he will even be able to hear something. About half an hour passed. Finally, Cameo deigned to go outside. The chance would arise when the red-haired man came out and the door began to close. The young man easily throws a piece of paper crumpled in his hands, and thus stops the door. Fortunately, Cameo will not suspect anything, and will simply calmly leave. For 10 minutes, the young man carefully examines the room, but very soon comes to the conclusion that he cannot find anything, as if someone had cleaned out the shelves. The realization hits like lightning and leaves the hero feeling disappointed. Cameo took the ledger with him. Time has already passed. Nothing came of it. Something else attracts attention. Of course it could mean nothing. But the young man is still going to check. He looks at the blue bag that was left right in the middle of the work table. Still, I managed to get something important, and it makes me happy. Now I won't have to go to Ariana empty-handed. She won't be disappointed. Going out into the corridor, the hero stumbles upon something under his feet. Bending down, he picks up an earring, which, as he remembers, belongs to that girl, Elena, it seems. A voice is heard. Almost immediately, the Baron looks around and sees in front of him that same brunette, the Count's mistress. She asks, "Who are you?" The stranger seems incredibly attractive to Elena. She thinks that he is a lost guest. If he came to the evening, then the event is over. The girl hears the answer. She becomes even more interested, because the man has not only a beautiful appearance, but also a beautiful voice. The Count is also good, but compared to this man, he is not the same at all. The brunette didn't even notice how she was lost in her stare. She decides to start a conversation about her earring. She accidentally lost it somewhere and now can't find it, which of course upsets her. The blue-eyed man chuckles and holds out the little thing. He found it on the floor a few minutes ago. The lady's face reflects happiness. The woman thanks him. This decoration is very valuable to her. The Baron might agree with this. Something like this is definitely valuable to any person. This is logical. For Elena, the decoration is special. It represents more than for anyone else. She has nothing but earrings because she lives in the county on bird rights. Realizing that they will soon have to part ways, Astaroth declares that he wants to thank her for her virtue, and then asks his name. Seer says his name. The woman understands who she has been talking to all this time. Ariana's lover is standing in front of her. It's disgusting. The girl lost her husband, but she can still be with such a man, especially since he is much more attractive than the Count. Elena tries to throw bad thoughts out of her head. Even if the young man is handsome, he is still a baron from a distant county. Astaroth surpasses him in wealth and strength. Turning away, the girl mumbles something about her sister not being there. He just nods. as if he himself doesn't know that the lady went to sleep in another building. There is disappointment everywhere in the world. Sometimes it comes in small portions, sometimes in larger ones. Seer turned out to be just a frivolous, pretty face. The woman is about to leave, but before that, she offers to visit the mistress of the estate, who is staying in the guest house for a while, but only if there is a desire to play with fire. The element of surprise always works as it should. After walking down the corridor, Elena turns around abruptly and asks, "Maybe Ariana is pregnant from you?" The Baron's reaction is priceless, because he doesn't understand how it came to this. Obviously, the man has nothing to do with it. Astaroth has to find out who got the girl pregnant in order to shut her up. After this conversation, the young man walks away, thinking about what happened. He feels somehow uneasy, so a decision is quickly made. I definitely have to check everything and talk to Ariana. The Count shouts for the servant to bring him the lock. The door needs to be locked from the outside. The assistant is surprised, reminding that the mistress is inside. But that is exactly why he was ordered to bring the lock. Until the woman repents and apologizes, she will not leave the house. The Count will force her to sign a paper that she will not do any more stupid things. The servants stand and do not move, which makes the guy even more angry. He will do everything himself, but this will have consequences. He will not stand still. The Baron, who is around the corner, does not understand what is happening at all. He is going to get up and take a look, but he did not want to know more yet. The hero stops near the girl's chambers. He knocks more than a few times, but no one opens the door for him. The young man is not going to stop, so he warns and goes inside. Ariana is sitting on the bed. She is looking at the floor, and it seems like she is not feeling well. The brunette immediately rushes to her and asks if everything is okay. He is really worried. Seir puts his hands on the beauty's shoulders and is about to ask something else. But then the lady asks if the robbery was successful. This is exactly what she is interested in now. The man wonders what the heroine will do once she is locked in. She would like to leave, but the two of them will not be able to get past all the servants and the master. The windows are still open, however. Only Seir can go down, but she won't do it, no matter how hard it is to admit it. The brunette offers to carry the lady in his arms. She is heavy, but he doesn't think so. Blue-Eyed throws the girl into the air and grabs her in his arms. He can swear that the heroine is as light as a polo stick. Listening to Wendy's words, the blonde cannot answer anything. She only instantly blushes. When they go to the window, the lady shouts that she needs to change. Ariana needs to buy new clothes. However, since she was kidnapped, it is the kidnapper who provides all the clothes. The beauty is asked to hold on tight, and then the man jumps down. Kaizen meets the gentleman and he is surprised. He asks why Wendy stole the Countess and not the account book. As he promised, it turned out that there was no book, and the girl had problems. She could not be left alone. Ariana's husband wanted to lock her up in the estate, so she quickly decided to escape. Tomorrow she has a very important meeting. If the lady is not present at it, all efforts will be in vain. The brunette doesn't understand Astaroth's logic. If it weren't for that, she would have probably allowed herself to be imprisoned. This is considered something strange. He still doesn't intend to ask unnecessary questions. The promise to stay for a short time sounds confident. Ariana will finish her business tomorrow and then return to the estate through the window, just as she left from there. Kaizen falls into even greater confusion. The lady said that Lowen wants to imprison her. The girl calmly shrugs her shoulders. She cannot constantly run away from her husband. She simply will not have a choice. She must protect her own home. Sitting at the table in the evening, the lady thinks about what she has to do. She needs to send a letter to Duchess Eitzel, and also tell Helen and Gwen about everything so that they are also aware. The heroine sat in the room all night and did not notice how it was getting lighter outside. Morning came. The tension went away. Now she wanted to eat. She was not going to take food without the owner's permission, so she would wait. The woman takes a sip of water from a glass and immediately realizes that something is wrong with the drink. Lowen comes down and says that it is ordinary water. He does not see a problem with it. The blonde nods. She knows about it. It's just different from what she usually drinks. Of course, it can't be compared to the water of the Count's family. Theirs is especially pure. The man holds out an apple. He grabbed it because he thought the lady would be hungry. She hopes the food will taste the same. All she has to do to find out for sure is try it. Taking a bite, she immediately notices that the apple is not bad. The girl ate it and did not even notice. She is still hungry because one fruit definitely does not replace a full meal. The detective acts suspiciously cute. He is always different, and this makes you doubt his real identity. The brunette asks to ask him if any questions suddenly appear instead of staring. I would like to ask for something, of course. Without any nonsense, Astaroth just wants to eat another apple. It turns out that the mistress's maid will come very soon. Kaizen went to get an assistant so that the lady would not feel helpless, and Wendy will go for clothes, since going out in a nightgown is considered unacceptable. The beauty didn't even notice how the detective left. He prefers windows. While the two were talking, time passed. The door swings open and Gwen flies in. She dragged a suitcase with her, which she won't give to anyone. Blue-eyed puts her things on the floor, saying that she specially brought enough clothes with her to make sure it would be enough. She doesn't even notice at first that there is someone else in the room. Raising her head, the girl is surprised. In front of her stands someone she certainly did not expect to see. The brunette smiles. The expression on his face makes him feel a good mood. The hero points up. If he needs to change clothes, there is a room there specifically for this. Astaroth knows exactly how to get there, so she can help. Gwen follows her mistress with her mouth open. As soon as they are alone, the woman starts saying something about how what is happening seems cute. She wants to know as many details as possible. She is a personal maid, but knows nothing about the Countess's secret dates. This is even upsetting. The blonde says that there is nothing between them, but the maid does not shut up. She is all for it. Because sometimes you need to have fun. In fact, being around Seer is not fun at all. All he does is talk about money. The conversation turns to the situation in the estate. The answer is quite moose. What can you ask? A nightmare, of course. The Count is making such decisions for the first time. Everyone is afraid. They think that something will happen. A crowd of sellers from Blonde has arrived since the morning. They say that something is wrong with the check. At first, the lady does not immediately understand what is being discussed. But then she realizes that on that day, before going to the Sazerain auction, she stopped by the central bank and canceled the signatures of Madame Green and Fleury. Now the Count will have some fun while he cleans up all the consequences. In fact, a lot of salesmen have gathered in his office, and each one is shouting louder than the other. There is a check for a huge sum lying on the table. All this will have to be paid to Green, but he is pretending. Or he really does not understand why he will have to pay this amount. The blonde is going to somehow make sure they leave him alone, but it seems he's out of luck. Those gathered in the office explain that the check was written out in Lowen's name. The young man involuntarily recalls a conversation with his wife. It happened not so long ago. That day, the lady asked for more reserve funds and also mentioned that Fleury and her mother would be arriving soon, which meant there would be more expenses. The Count just shrugged his shoulders, believing that they would not spend much, which meant the woman simply wanted to pocket the money. The girl tried to explain in detail why it was worth raising expenses, but they didn't want to listen to her. The blonde ordered not to use his family as an excuse. Green believed that half of the funds the lady asked for would be enough. Astaroth exclaimed in horror. She had already underestimated the amount, but then they decided to reduce it even more. Sitting in the office, where many angry salesmen gathered who needed his money, the young man begins to understand that everything his wife said was true. Madame and Fleury really spend huge sums on a daily basis. The lady meets the Duke. Fortunately, she is not late, which means it is time to go to a special exhibition hall, where they will continue what they have planned. Dylan was sent to present the statuette. He stands next to the piece and blushes as he explains that work on it began with the complete separation of the plaster from the rare gold. It is not yet clear what is more exciting: the restoration of the work or the story about it. Astaroth is interested in how the performance will develop further. A man standing nearby distracts me from my thoughts. The birth of the goddess of beauty is being exhibited to the public for the first time. He is interested in how much a ticket will cost. As it turns out, the original price was $500,000. They sold all 100 tickets, and the revenue was $500 million. Dylan should be paid handsomely. About half. Astaroth is not satisfied with the refusal, and she is already starting to talk about the possibility of canceling the next exhibition. There is nothing left but to give consent. In any case, it will be right.